Good evening and welcome to the May 7th meeting of the Ithaca Common Council. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. I have notes that Alderperson Haynes Sharp is excused for a qualifying absence. Thank you very much, Deputy Clerk. And I also have been informed that Alderperson Fabrizio has a qualifying reason for being late, and she will arrive later this evening. I also understand that Alderperson Shapiro is coming from childcare drop-off, and I understand that Alderperson Keel is on his way as well.
Yeah.
And Alderperson Brown is expected to be here momentarily, so we should have nearly a full house, with the exception of Alderperson Haynes Sharp. Okay, perfect. Since we have a packed house tonight, I'm going to go ahead and read the emergency evacuation notice. In the case of an emergency, we are to take one of two exits, the door that most of you came through, or the door back here, and we are to head west towards the corner of South Cayuga and Green. Please do not cross the street in that event. Those with restricted mobility, in the event of emergencies, it is best to move to one of the stairwells, and first responders will arrive to aid you. In the event of other emergencies, you'll be notified how to proceed at that time. We want everyone to be aware of their surroundings and offer help when it is not to your own detriment, as you are your own best advocate. Turning to agenda review, any additions or deletions to the agenda?
I'd just like to make a request to consolidate the items associated with ADUs next to each other. I feel like it'd be easier for our brains to just address item 7.2 and item 8.4 in sequence.
Is there a response to that, Alderperson?
Yeah.
Is
My motion will make that, render that.
so then speak to them, speak to it.
I am going to move that we can deal with these in committee, but I don't think we should deal with the member filed items tonight, especially so I'm going to move that we strike items 8.2, 8.3, and 8.4.
We need unanimous consent for either of those. So do we have unanimous consent or is there dissent? You dissent to the
striking.
Yep. And do you dissent to the second, to the primary? All right. So then we can address these things as they come up in the meeting, but we don't have unanimous consent. With that said, I see that Legislator Pillar, there they are. Welcome. Legislator Pillar is here with a report from the county. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Sorry. I don't have a ton to report tonight, actually. But the sound is very reverby, so that's what I'm reacting to, but everything's fine. The short version of the county report is various things are going along well, I think.
I'm just gonna take a throw in the dark here. Maybe pull your microphone closer to you. Maybe it's because it's so close to the owl. That's probably not it, but I'm gonna pretend that
Okay.
that's my logic.
Maybe you fixed it, although.
I think probably Shaniqua fixed it.
Pushing that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
definitely wasn't my idea.
So our Center of Government project is still moving along slowly, but things are looking smooth and on the same page with the State Historic Preservation Office, which was a point of worry before, so that's good. Our plans for the new shelter on Cherry Street far in the future are also a step further in that our staff had submitted I forgot what it's called, like a preliminary memo to OTDA, State Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance, I think, which starts a conversation that will lead toward applying for the state funds that are intended to go toward building things like exactly this. So no big news, but things are going. We've been hiring for a bunch of big positions, and that is going along pretty well. More than a usual number of candidates, I am told, were most recently employed by the federal government. And there was something else. We had our budget retreat last week, I think. which is where we get together and hear a presentation from our county administrator on kind of the state of the economy and different things driving potential changes in the budget. And typically, in past years, the legislature has given the county administrator a tax levy percentage increase target to shoot for. This year, we didn't do that, partly because we all, at a previous just educational retreat, there was not a public meeting, but no decisions were made. We heard from a financial budget expert from the New York State Association of Counties, a whole presentation about budgeting. And among the many recommendations, one very clear one was don't start with your total amount of money. Start with what it is you are doing. Like, what are your departments? What is your government doing? And why? And what does it actually cost? And go from there. So we, the county, and our county administrator in particular, is taking more of that approach this time. That said, we're going to have another budget retreat in July to like get a check-in when budget conversations with departments have all been had, when we have a state budget that will also help. And the budget retreats, by the way, they are public meetings, but they're not live streamed. There's no agenda, but people are welcome to come, and they are advertised in the usual manner that our like public hearings are advertised, even though it's not what they are. I think that's it.
Thank you, legislator. I'll quickly just note for the record, Alderpersons Brown and Keel have joined us as expected. Any comments or questions for the legislator on their report? All right, well, legislator, thank you very much for joining us this evening, and best of luck with your budget deliberations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we move on to our next item, I want to just briefly take a moment and request just a moment of silence to acknowledge the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War in Europe. Thank you. Next, I have a special presentation from our representatives from TCAT. I'm going to still call you new GM, right? Still relatively new. And our TCAT board chair and former mayor. Thank you both for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a very brief presentation, just a little bit about how TCAT is structured, how we're funded, some key facts. And this is also an opportunity, for the alderpersons to ask any questions about TCAT or transit in the area. Okay. You can take it to the third slide, I think. Next slide. So at a glance, we operate about little over 1.2 million revenue miles a year. We carried almost 3 million people in 2024. We operate a fleet of around 53 buses with 25 fixed routes and an additional seasonal route in the summer. And there are 3 stakeholders. The stakeholders are the entities that provide funding and support for TCAT, and that's the City of Ithaca, Tompkins County, and Cornell University. Go to the next slide. A little bit of history on TCAT. TCAT has very different history than most of the transit systems in New York State, which were previously private companies and became, public transit authorities or branches of government. We were the result of the merger of 3 entities, 3 that were operating transit. There was a lot of duplication. So they decided in 1996 to merge Cornell Transit, TomTran, which was operated by Tompkins County, and Ithaca Transit, which was operated by the City of Ithaca, into TCAT. And then Gadabout, which initially years ago started as an arm of the Red Cross, is our paratransit contractor. And then I sit on the Gadabout board. So we have a long, very successful partnership with Gadabout as well. They provide paratransit service across the city and county. So a little bit about how we're funded. Sometimes it's not well understood, public transit doesn't make money. The fares only cover a very small amount of our operating expenses. In the case of TCAT, it's only about 5%, slightly under 5% of our revenue comes from fares. Most of our revenue comes from public sources. So New York State STOA, which is 20%, that's our single biggest source of revenue. That's state operating assistance, which the state has provided for public transit systems since the 1970s. It's a per head and per mile formula. So it's tied very closely to how many people we carry and how far we carry them. Other state and federal sources combined is a larger share, but STOA is the single biggest singular source. So between the state and federal is about 35%, STOA is 20%. The Cornell service level agreement is 17%. The underwriters combined are another 16%. So that's essentially, divide that by 3 for the underwriters, each underwriter's individual share. And there's other revenues that we get, such as some contracted services we provide for Getabout, mortgage recording tax, advertising, sales of surplus vehicles, and that's another 6.2%. So a little bit about what the underwriter's share does, which is, and the underwriters again are the city, the county, and Cornell. They provide what's known as the local match, which is needed to get federal funding. So the federal government provides a tremendous amount of support for transit, but they do it on the condition that you have to essentially put up a local match. There's other instances where they do this. Aviation is a big one, where they match. They match. I think in aviation, it's almost a 90% federal share. So for operating, it's 50-50. So for every $1 of local share, the federal government will add an additional $1 federal match. With capital, it's either 20%. It's either 20% local and 80% federal, or it's 10% local, 10% state, and 80% federal. It all depends on the project. Every once in a while, there's special circumstances like COVID relief where it's a 100% federal match, or a specific project that's of considerable importance to the federal government. They sometimes will waive the local match. Local match usually is financial. Occasionally, you can sometimes justify it with, say, staff time on a specific project, or a resource sharing agreement or something like that. So on the next slide, we will talk a little bit about the services TCAP provides. We have 4 route categories. We have Campus Circulator. Those are routes that serve primarily Cornell University, and they usually stay on campus. Those are mainly to move students and faculty and visitors around the campus. That's about 20% of our total ridership. We have Campus Connectors. Those connect, say, downtown and other parts of the urban core to the campus. So those are your big routes, like your 10, 30, 31, 32, 51, and 90. That's about 60% of our total system ridership. Then we have general urban. These are the kind of core local routes around Ithaca. It also includes some of the routes that go to Ithaca College. That would be about 350,000 annual riders. And then we have rural. So rural's the biggest group of routes as far as the number goes, but it's a relatively small amount of ridership, less than 10% of the total system ridership. These are your routes that go to Dryden, Groton, Newfield, that operate outside the urban core. So if you look at a distribution of our ridership by route, the 30 by far is our busiest route. And in blue, it's our current, blue is I think 2024, or I'm sorry, green is 2024 ridership. So, the 30 again is our busiest route. You could see the Campus Circulators do a significant amount of ridership, as well as the number 10, which is a Campus Connector route. The rural routes, while again, there's many of the rural routes, they typically provide, they're much lower ridership. They only operate mainly at peak times. Very resource intensive, but and very critical to those rural communities that utilize them, but much smaller as far as ridership goes. And then generally, tracking our ridership by month, we follow kind of this like 2-humped camel. where it's very busy when the universities are in session. And during the summer and the winter break periods, ridership falls significantly. The dashed line is where we were before COVID, and the green line is where we are after COVID. So we've been making a lot of progress as far as moving back to our pre-COVID levels, but we're still not there yet. And that's a reflection because we're still not running enough service as compared to where we were before the pandemic. So a little bit about some of our challenges. Equipment is our biggest challenge. We operate a lot of service reliably. We ran almost 300,000 trips in the past year, and only about 5,000 were canceled. But if they are canceled, that obviously has a lot of impacts on the rider who's waiting for that specific trip. Almost all of our cancellations are due to equipment problems. We have a aging fleet. The fleet's gotten older. We have a number of buses that are obsolete, so it's very difficult to get parts for them. We have 7 battery electric buses that have been off the road because they have problems with their frames. So they're unsafe to operate, and those are likely never going to return to service. So that's caused kind of this vehicle shortage. The way you want to allocate mileage is kind of like an upside down pyramid, with your newest vehicles taking on the most mileage and your oldest vehicles, only being used occasionally. Because we haven't received, a new bus now in 4 years, a new 40-foot bus, if you exclude the Proterras, it's put our fleet in a state of disarray. So we have a big challenge with fleet. We have 11 new buses that will be delivered this year, including 5 diesels that should reach TCAT by the end of the month. So we have 5 diesels and 6 battery electric buses that will be taking delivery of this year. The battery electric buses we're getting are from a company called Gillig. We've worked with Gillig for a very long time. They've been in the bus industry for many years. We've worked with them for decades at TCAT. They put out a very good product. We're not expecting any problems like we had with Proterra, who was new in the market and had an untested technology. So we're very excited to get those new buses and try to increase our service once we get those buses on the road. We also have 5 used buses that we received as a donation from the Capital District Transit Authority in Albany, New York. And those have been seen around town. They're either red and silver or blue. They look a little different. They are hybrids, and those have served us very well so far. Workforce is also another area of challenge. We've made a lot of headway in the last year with hiring, and even more headway with retaining the employees we do have. And we have a new collective bargaining agreement that brings the wages up even more, makes them very competitive. We'll have among the highest starting wage for a bus operator in upstate New York. But, we see a tremendous amount of problems related to the high cost of living in the areas. I'm sure everyone knows the living wage report showed a 30% plus increase in what the living wage is in the last couple of years. And I think that highlights just the challenges that our employees are facing regarding housing, the cost of energy, and then all the other costs that inflate with those two things, because it drives up the cost of services and everything else. So it does create, a challenge as far as recruiting someone who wants to work at TCAT. Oftentimes people commute from, out of the county. And at that point, it poses the question, well, they might just want to work for the transit system in the county that they live in. So we do have, experienced a lot of issues with recruitment. Though that being said, with the new collective bargaining agreement that's in effect, we are expecting that the hiring situation will continue to improve. Another way that we've been trying to address the workforce challenges is with educational pathways. We've been working with vocational schools, trying to build partnerships, especially for mechanics. We've worked with Alfred State, SUNY Morrisville, and we've had a couple classes of the Eco Warriors through the Cornell Cooperative Extension come through and learn about TCAT. So we're really trying to leverage a lot of those educational partnerships to foster interest among young people working in public transit. And that's really all the presentation that I had, but I'd be happy to answer any more questions about TCAT if anyone has any.
Thanks very much for that overview and for joining us this evening. I'll first recognize Alderperson Keel.
Thank you guys so much for being here. I love the tie. It's really lovely. For anybody in the audience who can't see, there's the TCAT logo on his tie. It's very nice. Can you go back to the, oh, it's gone now. How much of the total budget is from ticket purchases?
It's about 5%.
Okay.
So it's not much.
There's like 980,000 somewhere in that ballpark.
Probably that sounds about right. Yeah.
Is there like any possibility, I know this has been something that's been talked about for a long time, long before my time on council, but finding other sources of funding to just make TCAT free if we're only taking in $980,000.
A lot of that is tied to state regulations. So the state provides operating assistance, but in order to provide the operating assistance, which is based per head and per mile, they require a minimum fare. And the minimum fare doesn't necessarily have to be paid by the rider. It could be paid by another entity, but you do need to have, say, if you have a certain amount of riders, you need to prove that you're collecting that money in fare revenue. The reason why is the state, when they introduced operating assistance in the 1970s, they didn't want public transit systems to go completely fare free and then the state to be footing the bill. At that point, fares probably were like 50% of revenue. You know, generally fares don't keep up with inflation. They may be due in a large city, but we've kept our fares very low, mainly because you don't gain anything from raising fares, you just get less ridership. So, you know, we would need something or someone to step in and take the place of that minimum fare, which I don't know off the top of my head what it would be, but, and then obviously to supplement the lost fare revenue. You know, it's something that a lot of transit systems have experimented with. I just got back from the Boston area where a lot of the smaller transit systems around Boston have been running fare free for a while. There's some challenges associated with it, mainly in managing capacity, because all of a sudden now it's free. So you have increased ridership and you don't want to overwhelm the system, but it's something worth looking at. But there's, you know, it's more than just supplementing that fare free revenue. Then you have to, you know, prove that you've got something that's, you know, being tied to that sort of minimum state fare regulation.
Okay, that's very interesting. Well, that's something I certainly would like to work on, and I know I'm not alone on this council. Do we have any opportunities for park and ride in Ithaca, or do we have any plans to expand that in the future?
Yeah, I mean, park and ride's been we've had discussions about that in the past before I started. You know, there's a lot of informal park and rides that go on, mainly in the rural areas where people park at the end of a bus line or along a bus line and at a business, and no one really says anything. It's not really a problem. We see that a lot in the route from Caroline. We don't have any formal park and rides, but I think if there's certainly interest, we could look at, you know, finding a location and perhaps, you know, doing maybe a pilot. You know, it would be interesting to see how successful it would be, because, you know, you'd have to be convincing someone, you know, to get out of their car and then get on, you know, switch modes again. But, you know, you know, you could probably make the argument that if it was a free park and ride as opposed to paying for parking, you know, you might see some interest in it.
Yeah, a lot of the employees who work in my ward, I've talked to, and they've spoken about the difficulties of finding parking in the College Town area. You know, both on the Cornell employee side as well as the non-Cornell employee side, we've got a lot of service workers who it's very difficult to find parking, especially that's low cost, when there is any at all. And then on the Cornell side, parking is just astronomically expensive. Hundreds and hundreds of dollars per semester, even if you're an employee. And so being able to set up some parking or park and rides in the areas that are most densely populated with service workers, I think would be, or at least along that route, I think would be valuable for my constituents.
Yeah, I mean, we'd be happy to look into that. I think, you know, the biggest challenge would be finding the site that's appropriate, but, you know, I'd be happy to have some discussions on that.
Alderperson Letterman, you're next.
Few questions, and thank you for coming in. First, how has the rollout of the new fare box system gone? I know you showed it to me when I came down and visited. I think it was just getting rolled out then, but how has that been going, particularly with having the app now too for payments?
So now it's going very well. It was a bumpy rollout when we rolled it out at the beginning of 2024, but we were going, most transit systems go from one version of a fare box from one company to the next version. We were going from something that was essentially homegrown to a completely different technology. There were some teething issues with that. We've gotten through all those. It works with the Cornell IDs. It works with the mobile app. We're looking at 2 new features in the next few months that will be really game changers. One is mobile payment. So you can use your phone or your credit card to tap on the fare box. You don't need to carry any cash, and you don't need to use the mobile app. You can just sort of tap on with your credit card, very similar to how buses work in New York City, if you've been there, or London. And the other one is fare capping. So fare capping is a great way to help the low income rider. And what you essentially do is someone may not have the cash to buy a monthly pass up front. So they just basically pay every day at the fare box. And over time, they ride the bus so much that they're paying for like 2 monthly passes. So they're getting penalized because they don't have the money up front. With fare capping, what that does is it associates your credit card or mobile ID, or however you're paying electronically, with a unique kind of identifier. And when you have paid a monthly pass worth, or a daily pass worth, or a weekly pass worth, it extends the privilege. So doesn't keep charging you over and over again. And what that does again is it doesn't penalize those who can't pay for a monthly pass up front.
Thank you. And I'm sure you may know this, but I always enjoy the fact that contactless payment was developed explicitly for transit.
Yes.
And that's why all of our credit card technology actually comes out of that. My other question was, I know there have been issues in terms of hiring and retaining heavy equipment mechanics. How is that?
We're now actually slightly overstaffed for mechanics. At the end of last year, we probably were down to 9 mechanics. We're now up to 15. We're still hiring if we find someone that meets, has the right experience and skill set. It will take time to get those mechanics trained on the vehicles, and they're very new to, they're very right out of school. Some of them we've gotten through our partnerships with some of the vocational schools in the region, but even a skilled diesel mechanic who has, say, a lot of experience from trucking would take them about 2 years to learn everything on a city bus. You have a lot of specialized systems. You have your air conditioning, your wheelchair lifts. You have all the technology and electronics, the motors in the back of the bus. So, it's a lot of, it's a very steep learning curve, but we're hopeful that with our new mechanics that we'll be getting some, we'll be getting a little bit ahead of kind of our maintenance backlog.
And then just one other question, and I clearly should control myself at some point, but has the federal government granted the waiver for the disposition of the Proterra buses?
Those are still pending.
Okay.
We're still working on that. No red flags. I think it's just there's a new FTA administrator, and I imagine he has quite a bit of things on his desk right now.
Thank you very much.
Next, I have Alderperson Brown.
Thank you for this presentation. Good to see you, Laura.
Good to see you.
I have, for one, I'd like to know, your stance on hiring people with felonies, right? Also, and are there programs for those individuals who've been home some time and can do that? For people who have felonies, and what program besides, what other programs in our community, not at the colleges outside, are you working with to prepare them for those jobs, right? At one time, GIAC had, I forgot the woman's name, who was doing training for people to get their license. What's that license they need?
CDL, commercial driver's
Yeah.
license.
She was training them, she was having them come in at GIAC and doing a training program, and at the end, they would pay them, but they would also get their, what did you say? CDL license. And are there programs in our communities besides Cooperative Extension that is trying to prepare our community members to maybe get some of those jobs, right?
Sure. So I think I'll answer the first question is about felonies. So we do not have a blanket policy of not hiring anyone with a felony. What we look at is relevancy and recency. So, it's the relevancy of what is on, the criminal record as well as how recent it was. And if it's been quite some time, it's usually, not considered. I mean, everyone, has, or a lot of applicants these days have, records, and, that we look at those two factors. So, relevancy, again, is if it's something that's totally irrelevant to performance in that position, we don't consider it.
Okay.
As far as programs, we work closely with CCE. I'm not aware as far as job placement of anyone else that we work with, but I think we'd be very happy to develop those partnerships. We're always looking to forge those partnerships with the community. It helps us with retention. It helps us with recruitment. It helps get people interested in the industry of public transit, which, definitely needs employees, needs people who are recent graduates, who maybe are making a career change, life change, adapting to re-entering the workforce. I think we're open to all of those things, and we do train to get your commercial driver's license, and we pay full wages during that training.
And that training is for anyone in this community that is willing to do the training.
That qualifies,
That
yes.
qualifies.
Yes, that qualifies for the
So
job.
could you please send me what the qualifications
Yes.
is? Because sometimes that limits. And if community haven't been involved in that conversation of what the qualifications should be, that usually leaves out a quite large population. And my last question is about the, where is it? You have 15 mechanics. I want the breakdown of their race, and also want to know how did you go about finding those mechanics?
So I don't have the demographic data in front of me right now.
Right.
But, we do we post the positions,
Yeah.
on our website. We post it on a number of other third-party websites. We send it to, our partners in the community so that it gets put out there. We do job recruitments, we go to job fairs. We were at Earth Day, where we had our human resources staff promoting Earth Day, but also reminding people we have lots of green jobs at TCAT. So there's a number of different ways we do outreach to try to be as inclusive as possible with our hiring practices.
Thank you.
And we do have a very strong HR director, HR manager at the moment. I should point out for council that the TCAT management team is a fairly new management team, and they are just doing a wonderful, wonderful job. Matthew in particular as general manager, but our HR manager and our controller and some of the other staff. So in terms of recruiting, and also with the contract now, that contract gives better opportunities for both recruitment and retention. Once we hire someone, we want to make sure to retain them
Yeah.
because it costs more to hire someone and then lose them.
One thing last but not least, they go Win. Hi, Win. I have to honestly say, I don't know about this new group who's there, but I know in the last maybe 2 years, sitting at Green Street, watching those buses pull up and seeing so many women, and specifically Black women driving the buses, made my heart sore, right? And I thank y'all for that, because that has to be. And why I'm asking these questions, because I believe when you start looking for community, you have to be intentional. So seeing those women driving the bus and seeing so many Black women driving the bus was I know that was intentional. So whoever was on board then, I hope they're still on board. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a philosophy that the workforce should be representative of the community that's served. So I'm glad to hear that.
Alderperson Matos.
My comments are similar to Ms. Phoebe's. First, I would like to recommend partnering or having a conversation with BOCES, especially because they do already have a mechanic program going on. So wondering if there's a way to incorporate buses. And my second question is, is there any programs, or do you guys offer, because I know one of the stipulations you guys have with hiring is like no speeding tickets, no accidents within like the last 2 to 3 years for folks, but that could present as a barrier, especially to our community of color. So is there any programs, or are you guys thinking of ways that you can work with those community members, like with driver safety courses or anything like that, to help or like help with that onboarding process or create opportunities in the future for them?
Sure. So it is not it's not a blanket ban. You know, you're allowed a certain amount of driving infractions within the period that we look back. Those regulations are actually set by the state. There's a series of regulations called 19A, and there's a series of disqualifications that prohibit you from driving a commercial passenger vehicle, school bus, city bus, intercity coach, if you have a certain number of infractions, and that dates back to a really bad accident they had in the late 70s. As far as developing those partnerships, you know, we'd be happy to work with any of those community organizations. You know, we definitely would be happy to do anything that promotes greater traffic safety. And we have had some conversations with BOCES. We've had a few interns through BOCES, mainly through our IT program. I don't believe we've had any BOCES mechanics yet, but we do have a close relationship with their staff. We have a wonderful intern from BOCES right now who's been learning all about transit IT. And he handpicked TCAT because he really wanted to learn about transit technology.
Great. Well, thanks again to Matthew Rosenblum Jones and former Mayor Laura Lewis for their presentation this evening and the conversation. Before I move to the minutes, while the agenda does not state any proclamations, I hope council will indulge a brief recognition of the important work that our and all municipal clerks do across the United States. In 1984 and in 1994, Presidents Reagan and Clinton, respectively, signed a proclamation officially declaring Professional Municipal Clerks Week, the first full week of May, and recognizing the essential role the that municipal clerks play in local government. Although it is one of the oldest positions in local government, few people realize the vital services that municipal and deputy clerks perform for their communities. Primarily, they act as the cornerstone of their council and their board, and I think the members of this body know especially well how true that is. The functions of the clerk necessitate a thorough knowledge of law procedure, administrative, and interpersonal relations. The International Institute of Municipal Clerks further challenges clerks to fervently pursue continuing education opportunities and professional networking to establish their role as a member of the municipal executive team. The IIMC sponsors Professional Municipal Clerks Week, and it was founded in 1947 as the professional association of 14,700 city, town, township, village, borough, deputy, and county clerks. IIMC is dedicated to improving the professionalism of the clerk and increasing the productivity of local government. Again, something that I think folks know is near and dear to our hearts. As president of the NYS Association of City and Village Clerks, they had shared this with us to extend their gratitude to the work and functions that they permit to the community. And as mayor of the city of Ithaca, I want to echo that and thank our deputy clerk here this evening, Shanika Lewis, and our clerk, Alan Carrison, for the tireless work that they do on behalf of our city. So thank you very much. Hope I didn't embarrass you too bad. With that, may I have someone please move the minutes? And actually, before I do that, formally, above the record note, thank you. Alderperson Shapiro has joined us as noted earlier. So we are just absent 2 members now. Moved by Alderperson St. Perez, seconded by Alderperson Keel. Any comments, questions on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you, 8, because we lost a council member temporarily. We'll say 8-1. Moving on, we have statements from the public. My first speaker this evening is Ann Sullivan. Given that we have more than 20 speakers per rules of procedure, each speaker will be permitted 2 minutes for their remarks. If you could just make sure the microphone is illuminated. Can you just press the button?
Sorry.
There you go. Now you have 2 minutes once you begin.
I'm looking at Dixon and I'm looking at our city manager and I'm back to that traumatic time 5 years ago when we thought we were going to get an ADU thing passed. And remember what happened? This county put a nix on it and then COVID happened. And I was just thinking about that because it was really a WTF moment. And it's nice to see some kind of resolution finally. I know some of you have probably got the petition that was signed mainly by people on South and East Hill. There were almost 200 of us. It is not against the ADU legislation, but it basically is a plea for you to consider the people who have been forgotten, which are people who want to own homes, who own homes, who want to purchase homes in Ithaca. As it is written, there is nothing that will offer special assistance to homeowners. And it does work. INHS has, I think, put 3 ADU apartments up since they got a grant to fund them. And so I think it's a model of what could happen. Because right now, as written, this is a bill that really only privileges landlords. And as someone who's just coping with a suddenly collapsed garage because of a windstorm, I know how hard it is to build something in Ithaca now. And I thank the planning board, the building commission for all the help I've given, but it's hard. So for this ADU legislation to succeed, there has to be something in it that acknowledges homeowners in Ithaca and that helps them do this. To pass it, it's just not going to work. And as I said, INHS has offered a really nice model of how you can do this, and there is money in the state to do it. I think it's hard to be a homeowner here in Ithaca. We're often treated with,
I'm sorry, that is your time.
oh,
Oh, I started my own clock. Okay.
you had your own clock?
I always do. I can't see the one behind me. You may have 5 more seconds. I didn't realize.
I was gonna say, but give me back my time I lost.
I just said you can have 5 more seconds.
Okay, we're the Celtics. So I want you to really look at Pierre's legislation and to think that if you leave homeowners out of the mix, you're also denying them an opportunity to build equity, which people need really to succeed in this society.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for letting me go.
Apologies to the deputy clerk who was I was stepping on your toes and making things more complicated. Exactly right. Really had to underscore the value of the statement I just read by demonstrating my own incompetence. Next speaker I have is Laura Vineyard. Welcome. And once you begin, you have 2 minutes. And I'm not going to keep the time.
All right, this is on and everything. All right, hey everyone, I'm Laura Vineyard. I am speaking today as Executive Director for the Center for Community Transportation. As a person who works every day in the realm of sustainable transportation and equity access to said transportation, I'm deeply appreciative of our city's commitment to addressing climate issues and building a more resilient community. I would like to express my support for the Common Council to reaffirm and uphold their commitment to the Ithaca Green New Deal and its goals. Ithaca has made important progress over the past 5 years from adopting the green building policy to passing Justice 50. Ithaca's commitment to active and alternative transportation is literally transforming how we get around. We need to carry that positive momentum forward and build on those accomplishments to address climate injustice in our community. This is a crucial moment for the city of Ithaca to reaffirm its commitment to the Ithaca Green New Deal and the important work of addressing climate injustice. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. My next speaker is Nikki Ray Israelson. Just on deck is Jeff Goodmark, just so we're keeping the crowd flowing. Nikki, welcome. You have 2 minutes once you begin.
Hi, y'all. Thanks for having us, as always. My name is Nikki Ray Israelson, and I'm speaking tonight both as a resident of the 2nd Ward and the director of Bike Walk Tompkins, your local bike and pedestrian advocacy organization. I want to begin by expressing my gratitude that the reaffirmation of the Ithaca Green New Deal is on tonight's agenda. As a reminder to everyone who is present, Ithaca was the first city in the United States to adopt the Green New Deal resolution back in 2019. That was a bold step. And through the adoption of Justice 50 framework, our city has shown that they're committed not only to ambitious climate goals, but to achieving them through the lens of equity and justice. And that is why I fully am in support of the reaffirming of the Ithaca Green New Deal. And I urge the city of Ithaca to continue leading by example, upholding its sustainable commitments and recognizing that this work happens in partnership with the community. Every person biking our streets, walking on our sidewalks, and riding the TCAT, shout out to Matthew, is already advancing this mission and this vision. They are among the many stakeholders helping to build a more climate resilient, livable, and just Ithaca. By reaffirming the Ithaca Green New Deal, you are recommitting to the health, safety, and future, not just of people who use sustainable transportation, but to all who call Ithaca home. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next, I have Jeff Goodmark, and on deck is Adam Hart. Welcome. You have 2 minutes once you begin.
Good evening, council members. My name is Jeff Goodmark. I've been living in Ithaca for 35 years, and tonight I'm here to speak in support of the Ithaca Green New Deal. Over the past 5 years, Ithaca has been a real leader in the adoption of green building policies, and with the passage of Justice 50. These policies are not just symbolic, they are actually shaping a more sustainable and equitable future for our city. We can't let this momentum stall. This is a crucial moment for the city of Ithaca to reaffirm its commitment to the Ithaca Green New Deal and its bold, justice-centered vision. Climate change is not a future threat, it's now, and the communities most affected by injustice cannot afford delays or backtracking. Please continue to stand by Ithaca Green New Deal, and let's build on what we started together. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Adam Hart. On deck is Murali Sitaraman. Welcome. You have 2 minutes once you begin.
Great, thanks everyone. I'm also here to speak in favor of reaffirming the Ithaca Green New Deal. Ithaca has set forth a very ambitious plan to tackle climate change and build a more equitable and climate resilient community along the way. While the federal government moves to attack any sort of climate or DEI initiatives it can, Ithaca has a chance to stand up and say we will stay committed to our community and will not back down from moving forward on our prior Green New Deal commitments. And instead looking into ways to uphold and expand upon those commitments. Y'all have already done the hard part of passing the reaffirmation of the sanctuary city status under direct threats from the current administration. And I am very proud of y'all for doing that. That's huge for our community and would love to see y'all carry that courage forward in passing this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Murali Sitaraman, and following him will be Teresa Alt. Welcome, Murali. You have 2 minutes once you begin.
Thank you, Council, for all you're doing to improve the housing situation in Ithaca. It's a national, global problem, and every little bit you're doing is a help. I'm here to support the ADU legislation as it stands. I know there have been signatures in Bell Sherman, where I live and where I own a house, and I understand the concerns, but there's probably a silent majority who have some of the points that I make here. There are already rentals everywhere, including Bell Sherman in Ward 3. And restricting that rental owners cannot build ADUs just severely restricts what new housing will be built. So already this legislation will have only a limited impact. So if you restrict who's going to build, it's going to restrict it even more. Adding that owner needs to live there essentially will make this legislation meaningless. So you might as well not pass it if you're going to make such a requirement. What is rented today will be owned tomorrow and vice versa. So any partitioning you do today is kind of seems problematic. For example, for buying and selling, what happens if I want to sell? Am I supposed to look for somebody who would live there and who won't rent it? So that's also problematic. Ithaca is already gentrified. We don't need special rules to make some wards even more gentrified. So let's not go there. And if you need to add a clause that limits the number of years this goes into effect, and then you'll come back and revisit it, that's all right. But do please pass the legislation. We need more housing. We need more people here to be able to live in Ithaca.
Thank you. Teresa Alt is our next speaker. And then the speaker following Teresa is Armin Hurek.
I'm Teresa Alt of 206 Eddy Street in College Town. I am here to address 3 measures on tonight's agenda. ADUs, that's 7.2 on the agenda. Vote for ADUs as of right in R1 and R2 zones. No poison pill requirements for owner occupancy. No more special permits. Some homeowners need to be able to share their properties. CTAP, that's 8.2 on the agenda. Vote to rescind CTAP. It achieved its density goal many years ago. It has flooded the city with unaffordable apartments, some now vacant. Supporting the development of ADUs, that's 8.4 on the agenda. 3 of St. Perez's resolved seem sensible to me. The 4th one, suggesting tax abatements, seems improbable. The application fee that the IDA charges is $1,000. Also, I hope that the city will consider how to facilitate the building permit process for homeowners.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Armin Hurek, and following them is Samuel Scott.
Good evening. My name is Armin Hurek. I am an educator at Ithaca High School. I spent a lot of time doing climate education. And you can probably imagine that I'm here to encourage you to make one of the easiest decisions that you'll ever make on Common Council, because I know that a lot of choices that you are making are very challenging. Reaffirming Ithaca's Green New Deal I just think it's just an obvious choice. And we need you. Here at Ithaca High School, we are working with a collection of amazing students and district-wide, an amazing group of staff members. We're trying to get a climate action plan passed by the school district. That will have a really meaningful impact on reducing greenhouse gas emissions in our school community and in our school and in our city in general and the broader Ithaca area. We need the partnership with Ithaca Green New Deal. Justice 50 is an incredibly important component, and I'm really proud of you all for supporting this. And I urge you to just say yes and continue on so that we can all be proud of Ithaca's firm commitment to addressing the climate crisis with real meaningful legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Samuel Scott, and following them will be Zachary Wynn.
Hello, thank you for your time. My name is Sam Scott. I'm a resident of Ward 2. I'm here to express my support for the Ithaca Green New Deal. And I want to acknowledge that the Trump administration's dismantling of critical environmental protection jobs, agency research, et cetera, mean that local and state protections of these ideals and environmental protections are even more crucial. I think that climate justice and collective liberation are not possible without legislation such as the Green New Deal, which is an excellent step in the right direction towards addressing systematic injustice and environmental injustice that disproportionately affects marginalized communities everywhere. I want to express my support and say, please continue to reaffirm Ithaca's commitment to the Green New Deal, because without the Green New Deal, you would not be upholding your commitment to being a sanctuary city that protects those most vulnerable to this devastating effects of climate change and the devastating effects of the Trump administration. Thank you for your time and have a nice day.
My next speaker is Zach Wynn, followed by Emily Thuja. You have 2 minutes once you begin.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm speaking in regard to the pilot encampment management policy. I'm glad progress is being made and hope that the city will be able to provide a clean water source and lighting to the area as soon as possible. Having been down there at night, I can tell you that it is as dark gets. There's also a fire hydrant that could be rapidly retrofitted into a water spigot without affecting its firefighting capacity. Speaking with people familiar with the sanctioned camping area behind Walmart called the Exception Zone, I have been told that there's a great deal of crime taking place in the area, from drug dealing to theft, and it would be beneficial for there to be cameras installed around the perimeter of the area as a deterrent to this type of activity and to aid in investigations. It would also be helpful if there was a phone in the area that connected to Tompkins County Dispatch, similar to the blue light phones on campus. There have been a number of overdose deaths in the area, as well as a suicide and many fires. With many in the population of the jungle not having a cell phone, it would be good if people were able to summon help easily at a known location. It is my understanding that with the return of good weather, a number of individuals who have apartments in the Asteria and Art House have returned to living in the jungle, including in the sanctioned camping area. I'm curious if there will be any mechanism to control who occupies the space or prevent people from residing in the area if they are domiciled elsewhere. Is the area open to be occupied by anyone who wishes to live there regardless of their circumstances? Is there a plan to, in the event a large number of people, perhaps from outside the community, choose to come to live in the exception zone? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Emily Thuja, and following them will be Ruth Yarrow. Welcome. You have 2 minutes once you begin.
Hey, so I'm Emily Thuja. I live in Ward 3, South Hill. I guess I'll say, I'll open by saying I want to pay a compliment to a small change in the public comment forum. I really like that with the agenda, there's information for the participants. I came to my first Common Council meeting last fall, didn't know the rules, didn't know the ropes. It was very confusing. And it was off-putting when I came in 10 minutes late and found out that, you know, I had finally scheduled it with my family to be able to come to one of these meetings, and the comments that were very important to me, I couldn't make because I was late. It was a barrier. So I really like that the rules have like softened a little bit, and I wanted to say thank you for that. So my other topic, back on the audit question, we're looking for seeing the city's financial report. We're still waiting for it. And the way that I'm going to talk about that tonight is I'm going to read our neighboring cities and the most recent financial statements that they have completed. So Cortland's most recent audit was for December 2022. Syracuse's most recent audit was for June 2024. Binghamton's most recent audit that they completed was December 2023. Auburn completed theirs. Theirs are done through June 2024. Seneca Falls, they're a little behind. January 2022. Tompkins County, theirs were done December 2023. Town of Ithaca, they make City of Ithaca look not so bad. December 2021. And Elmira's, they completed through December 2023. And drum roll, Ithaca's most recent was 2020.
Thank you. Next, I have Ruth Yarrow, and following them is Joel Friedel. Welcome, Ruth. You have 2 minutes once you begin.
Thank you. Ruth Yarrow from 224 Cleveland Avenue. I'm here to urge the council to ensure that the Ithaca Director of Human Resources gets appropriate treatment. I'm thinking back 6 years when I joined the Human Rights Commission, and it took a better part of a year for the legislature and the Human Rights Commission to actually work together because of an unfortunate treatment of the director of the Office for Human Rights. I hope that doesn't happen here. And my other thing is to urge you to reaffirm your support for the Ithaca Green New Deal. Thank you very much for all that you do.
Thank you. Next is Joel Friedel, And then following them is, oh. Go. Sorry. No reason to apologize. Welcome. You have 2 minutes once you begin.
Thank you. Good evening. At the public hearing for the ADU ordinance, I was surprised by a basic absence of facts in council's discussion. How many residential backyards in Ithaca fit the criteria for the ADUs? 200? 2,000? How many for the ward you represent? You should know these numbers since planning did the analysis in 2019. Have you shared these numbers with your constituents? Also, how many ADUs in residential backyards do you expect to be built citywide and in your ward? David West, a planner from Geneva, stated at the hearing he'd be amazed if more than a few were built each year. If that's so, is this a serious solution to Ithaca's housing crisis that justifies a massive zoning change? Councilmember Lederman said at that hearing that if the ordinance were in place when the interest rates were low, many, many units would have been built. What if those economic conditions return soon, say in a Trump recession? Remember that Mr. West also praised the ordinance for the fact that it had no poison pills, that is to say, no restrictions that might inhibit anyone, landlords, developers, Blackstone Realty, from buying up residential properties for ADUs. After all, very few homeowners can front the hundreds of thousands of dollars needed to build a new ADU. The entire point of the ADU ordinance is that it opens to this development every residential property in Ithaca that meets the basic size criteria. How can you vote yes if these basic planning facts are not part of the discussion? I urge council to table this proposal and conduct actual substantive consultation with their constituents first. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I think it's Anthony Seidel. Forgive me for not being able to decipher the handwriting. And then following them is Taylor Moon. Welcome. You have 2 minutes once you begin.
Yeah, my name is Anthony Seidel. I'm a member of the community. And I have some questions about the encampment resolution that you have coming up. I saw that originally you had earmarked 300,000 set aside for a temporary navigation hub. And now you've changed that resolution. Now you have earmarked, if I'm reading it right, $950,000. And that covers, there's about 20 people down in the encampment. So you're gonna spend $1 million on 20 people? That doesn't make any sense. You could house them for 3 years with that money. I'm also a little disturbed by the fact that Mr. Recchio and Mr. Cool came to our meetings and never mentioned once the advisory committee for the encampments. I'd also like to know why nobody in the encampments knows the encampment coordinator person. She hasn't even been down there. She was hired, what, 2 months ago? Why hasn't she come down there yet? She should be going down there to talk with those people since she's being paid to do so. Don't you think? Also, you want to put this navigation hub in the southwestern side of town and it's supposed to also be used for people that are in the homeless shelters as well as marginalized peoples. And that's in a corner of the town that's a little more difficult to get to than it would be more beneficial to be central to the town. And I guess that's all I have to say. And I really hope you rethink voting on this today. Thank you.
Thank you. My next speaker is Taylor Moon. Following them is Zach Schmidt.
Hi, thank you. My name's Taylor Moon. I have a number of things I want to speak to, so I'm going to go kind of quickly. First of all, I am strongly in support of the Green New Deal and the encampment policy, and I encourage you all to continue your support of that. And then regarding CTAP, I am in favor of rescinding it as it exists because I think that it is excessively incentivizing large developers to build big complexes that are inherently more expensive and therefore command exorbitant rents, leading to a large number of units that are effectively tax subsidized sitting empty. I would prefer to see these kinds of incentives going to local, smaller developers to build more medium-sized units that would be much more in the mid-range of the market. The most important thing I would like to say is that I encourage you to vote in favor of the ADU legislation as it exists without the owner occupancy limit. I understand the concerns over or like large corporations buying up single family homes. But I think that that is a larger problem that exists in this country, and kneecapping this particular piece of legislation will do very little to mitigate that. And I would encourage you to reframe this legislation as something that would further empower the community to adapt both as individuals to allow our grandmothers to age in place gracefully, or for us to densify effectively without changing the nature of neighborhoods significantly. I'm running out of time, so that's where I'm going to end it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Zach Schmidt, followed by Kenny Russell. Welcome. You have 2 minutes once you begin.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'm a local youth. I've grown up here in Ithaca since I was 4 years old, and I'm currently a member of the Sunrise Ithaca Local Youth Climate Justice Chapter. They're all great people. And as you can imagine, I'm here tonight to support express my support for Ithaca recommitting to the Ithaca Green New Deal. The Ithaca Green New Deal is not just any old legislation, it's actually like very groundbreaking. I feel that Ithaca for many years, ever since it was launched in 2019, has been a great role model for other cities to also adapt this legislation, especially since Ithaca is a smaller city. We're not a metropolis. We're also in a very, we're surrounded by rural communities. We would not be expected to receive the funding we get, but we have been able to receive it up until the recent federal cuts from the Trump administration. And I'm just here tonight to express that the youth of Ithaca and the surrounding area are very much in support of the Ithaca Green New Deal. We are not just passionate about that, but we're passionate about expanding climate justice in our community. And we feel that the Ithaca Green New Deal is a wonderful, very efficient and effective way to support climate justice in our community. With pressure from the current administration, with cutting funds, it doesn't just affect the environment, it affects our social communities too, because climate justice is about social justice and the environment. And climate change affects vulnerable communities the most, disproportionately, especially in our community. So I'm here to express the need that we stay committed to the Ithaca Green New Deal moving forward, and that the youth are in full support of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My next speaker is Kenny Russell, and following them is Cassandra Ponton. Welcome. You have 2 minutes once you begin.
Hi, my name is Kenny, and I'm a 10th grader at IHS. I'm part of Sunrise Ithaca as well. I believe the Ithaca Green New Deal is important because with all the cuts happening and the actions being made that puts our climate at risk, the Green New Deal can give us a way to lead and set an example of what we can do to improve our lives and improve our home. I for certain want to live in a place that doesn't jeopardize my health with all the toxic pollutants entering the air. The Earth is our home, and I want to be able to continue living with no health risks related to poor environment. Again, I believe the more effective way of reaching that goal of a healthy climate and home is to support the Ithaca Green New Deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Cassandra Ponton, followed by Carolyn Headlam. Good evening. Welcome. You have 2 minutes once you begin.
Thank you. I'm here to talk about the encampment policy. And I would just ask that the vote be tabled for this meeting because I've been working with the Housing Justice Collective here in Tompkins County, and we were given a report weeks ago to respond to, which was greatly appreciated. And then I was shown today a new report with more information, which again is great, but we haven't had the time to digest that. It's nice to see that there's an actual plan for the allocated money for the encampment policy. So I would just ask that there's more time for community response to this more thorough report. And in the report, there was talk of the navigation hub. It is unclear at this time whether this is a permanent navigation hub or a temporary navigation hub until the shelter is put in place. And I find it frustrating that the city and county continue to pass the ball to each other when it comes to homelessness. You know, Syracuse does really well working with the county and the city to address homelessness in their county. So it would be nice to see if there could be some collaboration between the city and the county when it comes to homelessness. And now that the city has become more involved with the encampments in this kind of way, is there a way to expand that involvement to move past the encampments? Because like other people said, it's a very small portion of the homelessness population that needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker I have is Carolyn Headlam, followed by Teresa Fulton. Welcome, Carolyn. You have 2 minutes once you begin.
Good evening, Carolyn Christina Headlam, resident of the 2nd Ward, pro Green New Deal and sustainable housing development. While I've never experienced literal homelessness, I've been chronically housing unstable. Thus, I am deeply impacted by and passionate about resources to combat housing precarity, including the root causes of homelessness and barriers to attaining and maintaining housing. I would like to start off by acknowledging the hard work and dedication of the Advisory Committee on Encampment Response Policy. At the same time, I find there are several crucial outstanding questions and concerns regarding the scope of work of this body. My understanding is that the special committee was convened to evaluate and make recommendations for updates to the city's pilot encampment policy, originally set to expire this year. This time-limited, narrowly tailored charge seems to have expanded and evolved beyond the original scope and timelines. First, when an additional $250,000 for comprehensive homelessness prevention and emergency services were first proposed in the city's budget process last year, Councilor suggested rolling these funds into the capital projects budget. While this shifted the focus of the funds from community-driven proposals to capital improvements, I do not believe that it had been decided that all $800,001 would be overseen and allocations essentially decided by the time-limited special committee as outlined in tonight's voting resolution. I find it curious that at a time Ithaca is touting participatory budgeting initiatives for uses of City Hall Plaza, there's not a similar level of solicitation of public involvement around decisions regarding land use of a much larger piece of city land with deeper and broader impacts on Ithaca City residents, both including and beyond unhoused populations. Two asks, table this resolution for a future meeting and schedule a public hearing with sufficient time for community.
Thank you. That is your time, but you may submit the rest of your comments in writing.
Ian,
Thank you very much. My next speaker is Teresa Fulton, followed by Pat Sewell. Welcome. You have 2 minutes once you begin.
Hi, I'm also with the Housing Justice Collective, and as well as being Vice Chair of the Human Rights Commission, and I work with Mutual Aid Tompkins to coordinate the food sharing cabinets. Also here to speak about the homeless encampment. I was really pleased to see the pilot administration policy to manage the encampment. Through my work in the community, I've met many of our unhoused community members, and I'm one of the many community members that helped take food and other items to the cabinet located near the unsanctioned part of the camp. I'd like to point out to the council, however, that there are many unhoused persons that do not live in the camp. They are couch surfing, they're living in vehicles and doorways, and they also need access to those services. And I strongly support the development of a navigation hub. I know many people that find it difficult to get to doctor appointments and visits to DSS because they have no place to leave their dogs, who they will not leave, and no place to leave their personal possessions. Wi-Fi and computer access is crucial for applications for jobs and assistance, as are showers. The services proposed to be in the hub are super important, therefore, but I suggest that the city think about being a little more flexible about the location of the hub. Does it really need to be all centralized? Because it seems doubtful that there's going to be a location where everything can be placed at once. And maybe it's not important that everything go together. And maybe it's not important that it be right next to the Southwest Park area, just within walking distance. Lastly, I'd like to address the proposed livability improvements to the sanctioned Southwest Park encampment. I understand that there are complications with trying to prevent the camp from becoming a state campground. But at the very least, drinking water and bathrooms are basic human rights. Water for the people, water for the dogs, water for hygiene.
That is your time, but you may submit the rest of your comments in writing. Thank you. Next, I have Pat Sewell, and following them is Pei Soinka Arawella. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. I get mine now. You have 2 minutes once you begin, Pat.
Thank you. Hello, esteemed council members. I'm here today to discuss the idea of owner occupancy regulations in the third ward. Last month, when the issue of owner occupancy was brought up, there was some concern raised by members of Common Council. We were told that people had not reached out to you, even though your phone numbers and emails were available on the city website. We were told that no one had brought forward an alternative proposal to the one currently being offered. We were told essentially that requiring owner occupancy in the third ward would thwart the goals set forth regarding the ADU policy. I lost my place. So, acting in good faith, we have sought to address these concerns. We have a petition providing an alternative policy signed by close to 200 people from the third ward. We have a council member here who's going to share that and file the resolution, as you're aware of. This may have not come to you personally, but please be assured this is a community reaching out and asking for your help. We have heard your concern that owner occupancy may limit ADU development in the third ward. We have tried to answer those concerns. Have you heard our concerns? Our concerns that single-family housing stock is dwindling, that residents can't compete with outside developers enticed by the addition of ADU allowances, that absentee landlords are negligent to both their tenants and their property. Common Council seems to acknowledge that a comprehensive ADU policy is not going to solve our housing crisis. All the more reason to make a policy flexible enough to address the concerns of our community. Common Council can have ADU development. The third ward can maintain its mix of housing options. This does not have to be an all or nothing policy legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Pei Soinka Arawella. Following them is Beth Harris.
Good evening. My name is Pei Soinka-Arawella, professor at Ithaca College and been in this community for over 20 years. I speak on behalf of a large Africana network representing people of color who are gravely concerned about a continued crisis of workplace harassment and mistreatment of highly qualified and competent individuals in our community. In the past year, I have personally faced death threats against my person and my family, motivated in part by the xenophobic hatred in our political spaces that destroy a sense of belonging and equitable treatment that we should enjoy. We look to you to uphold our rights to work with respect for our skills, experience, and expertise. It is therefore particularly disturbing to learn of allegations of severe discriminatory practices, procedural gaps, and retaliatory actions that undermine the integrity of the city's own top leadership and employment practices. It is distressing to see documentation regarding alleged lack of due process, procedural failures, hostile work environment, including racist tropes, denigrating a Black employee's physical presence, undermining of the work of the employee via obstruction, retaliation, threats to use the media against the employee, pressures to resign without timely written due course. If there is evidence of such patterns of retaliatory governance and discriminatory treatment against an employee in the city who is doubly rendered vulnerable to rights violation because of their race and gender, we ask that you make it plain in the strongest way possible that such actions violate the very principles of fairness, of transparency and equity that this community holds dear. As stipulated in the city's protocols, we urge you to conduct a fair, independent, and transparent reviews of the concerns raised by your employees and restore our trust in this city's leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, I have Beth Harris. Following Beth Harris, Peace Gillette. Welcome. You have 2 minutes once you begin.
I want to express my support for the attempt of the Common Council to create a humane policy for those living in the encampments right now. I appreciate that you interviewed people in the encampments about what their needs. I'm not quite sure how what you learned was incorporated, but I think that homelessness is a huge problem right now in our city and county. It's going to get worse. And I think the encampments are just the tip of the iceberg. One of the things that it says in the report that the encampments are addressed because it is land use responsibility. I really suggest that you not narrow land use responsibility of the city to the encampments. Land use includes zoning, property regulations, and in order to create a solution, there needs to be a comprehensive plan for the expansion of housing. There is no place for people to go, except, as you allude to in the report, to the shelter when it's built in 3 years. So what's the options? Encampment or shelter? That is not a housing policy. It is, and we need better. And in addition, I agree with the statements about the importance of navigation hubs, but they need to be more decentralized, and we need to expand advocacy throughout the territory. And also, lastly, community needs to be involved in this process. The same agencies that have been producing the services and are funded by the city, along with the politicians, is not enough to solve the problems. They are recreating them.
Thank you very much. My last in-person speaker is Peaches Gillette. And then I'm going to turn to our Zoom speakers. Good evening and welcome. You have 2 minutes once you get settled and begin.
My name is Peaches Gillette. I'm a minister at the UU Society of Ithaca. I sit as a treasurer on the Human Rights Commission, and I'm an educator. And I founded a group called All Eyes and Ears on Racism, and I'm here just to kind of echo my support for the rights of employees. So I'll read this statement. It has come to the attention of AIR, All Eyes and Ears on Racism of Tompkins County, a nonprofit watch group that our voices may be need to be heard here. We are echoing the others in support of specific employee and all employees of Tompkins County. It is important to remember that all employees, when under the scrutiny of their employment supervisors, do have very clearly, very thought out, documented human rights. Tompkins County prohibits discrimination and harassment based on several protected characteristics: age, race, religion, national origin, sex, disability, body type, and more. This includes protection from discrimination in hiring, firing, wages, and other terms and conditions of employment. Employees are entitled to due process concerning workplace complaints about their habits and capabilities, which means that they have the right to fair procedures. They must receive written notice of a proposed action, allowing them a chance to respond and an opportunity to present their case before any action is taken. I know that Tompkins County does all it can to be equitable and just on behalf of all its community members, but in light of the overwhelming social needs that are present here in Ithaca and in other parts of the county, all of us who care and must keep watch to assure that no one falls through the cracks and becomes a victim of the possibility of their rights being overlooked. I thank you for your time, your help, and your watchful eyes. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is on Zoom, and it's Ace Dufresne. Hi, Ace. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right. You have 2 minutes once you
Yeah.
begin.
Thank you. My name is Ace Dufresne. I'm a junior at IHS, and I'm the leader of Sunrise Ithaca, the youth climate justice organization behind the Ithaca Green New Deal. I'm speaking tonight to support the resolution for the city of Ithaca to reaffirm its commitment to the Ithaca Green New Deal. It is a difficult time for climate action, and I do not wish to diminish that. But if we want to continue to work toward the goals we established in 2019, we need all hands on deck. The Ithaca Green New Deal is more important than ever. The country is looking to us as an example and a model. We have the opportunity to prove that climate justice and local policy is possible. On Earth Day, this year, 50 high school students and over 100 middle school students walked out of school for 3 main local demands. First, for Cornell to protect academic freedom and free speech on campus. Second, for Ithaca to reject Cornell's attempts to get out of the Ithaca Energy Code supplement, which I believe you received a petition about. And lastly, for Ithaca to reaffirm its commitment to the Ithaca Green New Deal. We had a total of over 250 people at that rally. And while they are not all here today, I know that they are in spirit. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mike Morrell. Just probably the phone number one because it's. Hi, Mike. Can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You have
Can you
2
hear me?
minutes once you begin.
Hi, my name's Mike Morrell. I've been a resident of the jungle for over 30 years. Hold on, I'm trying to get my notes here. I've seen it go from a really nice, place to a not so nice place. I know you're voting on the encampment policy tonight. I would love to see streetlights go in as well as cameras and police presence. The jungle is out of control and is only getting worse by the day. There are people moving back into the jungle that have places to live in the Hysteria and Art House, but choose to come to stay in the jungle to be closer to stores that they steal from. And this crowd create more problems for the rest of us that are down here that want to stay out of trouble. I really hope that you people will consider putting in video cameras as soon as possible and providing clean water source. As far as the other things, I'm afraid that word's going to get out and you're going to have other people coming from other states and other, towns just to be here because Ithaca's providing toilets and laundry and shower facilities. When all we need really is clean drinking water, because we could, get the water, put it in a 5-gallon bucket, heat some up, take a bird bath. We're good. We don't need all this other extra. They've already had the outhouses down here, and they were trashed. There's needles left in them. It's to the point where the company doesn't even want to empty them anymore. So I hope that the city will reconsider what they're proposing.
Thank you,
as
sir.
far as
That is your
bathrooms.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker I have is John Graves. Hi, John. Can you hear us? You're on mute if you're speaking. John, can you hear us or can you unmute? Can you hear us now? I guess you probably can hear us the whole time. We still can't hear you. John, are you speaking? We can't hear you if you are. All right, I'm really sorry we're having a technical issue here. John, you may submit your comments in writing. We will take the last speaker and try to come back to you. But it seems that there's a technical issue on I'm not exactly sure what end. Shaniqua, could we put the last speaker in? Adiana Yardi? Hi, good evening. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Good evening.
Good evening. You have 2 minutes once you begin.
Okay, good evening, Common Council. Thank you so much. I'm here to speak on advocating for fair hearing, equity, and justice. My name is Adina Yate, and I'm a visiting scholar and assistant professor at the Politics Department at Ithaca College, and also a commissioner of the Human Rights with the Human Rights Commission. And I'm here to actually urge the Common Council, which is the legislative branch of our city government, and plays a pivotal role in ensuring that all citizens receive fair treatment under the law. And this also includes enacting policies that protect the rights of individuals and promotes justice. And part of what I'm talking about, that I urge the Common Council to fulfill its designated role as outlined in the city charter, committing to thorough and impartial review of its employees' cases, ensuring that there's no workplace intimidation, ensuring there's no systematic exclusion of any kind, and ensuring that every employee receives a fair hearing, that any decisions that are made are grounded in equity and justice. And in conclusion, I say that when this is done, standing together and upholding these principles, we can create a community where everyone feels valued and protected. Thank you for your attention and your commitment to justice.
Thank you. And we'll take one more attempt to get John Graves on the line. John, can you try to unmute? All right. Again, apologies that Zoom did not seem to cooperate with us this evening. If you can hear us, you're welcome to submit any comments you have in writing to the council. Apologies for the Zoom inconvenience. All right, with that, that concludes our public comment. I'll now turn the privilege of the floor. Alderperson Keel, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me just pull up my my notes here. Okay, yeah, so I wanted to touch on a bunch of things today. Thank you, as always, for all of you coming. It's always great to hear your voices. I encourage you to come to every meeting and speak on every issue. It really does make an impact, especially on how I vote. I always find myself reconsidering all sorts of things at the start of these meetings. The first thing I'll touch on is the encampment working group. We had multiple people tonight who spoke against the pilot policy that we have in the agenda for this evening. I wanted to express my dismay that we had people who were speaking against it. I've spoken here as well as publicly about how I think that this group has been incredibly empowering for the community. I have never seen a city program or a city initiative that has been so grounded in public input. And this is in the report, I encourage everybody to read it. We engaged members of the encampment community, both through conversations, through working groups, as well as through survey responses. We engaged nonprofit partners, both major nonprofit partners that the city works with regularly, as well as the Human Service Coalition, which represents all nonprofits in the city of Ithaca who provide human services. This policy was presented at Human Services Coalition meetings multiple times, and feedback was requested. We've gone through multiple iterations of this policy. I also think there was one comment that, the city needs to do more. And I would say that this is the city doing more. The city historically has done nothing. And I think that this is the first step at actually doing something. And I'm really happy that we're taking that step. I also wanted to read directly from the report. There were some concerns about money being spent. And I would actually agree with the point that we shouldn't be spending $800,000 on 20 people. That seems kind of ridiculous. You could put, come on, we could buy an apartment for someone for $800,000. The problem with that is it's not just for 20 people. Specifically in the report, it says a navigation hub can provide a safe indoor space for transitions to and from encampment sites, as well as serve others experiencing housing instability or homelessness in the city of Ithaca. And the paragraph goes on and talks extensively about all types of people experiencing housing insecurity. On top of that, I think that this is, and I've been advocating for this since I got onto council, a really important step towards collaboration between the city and the county, and that has been happening. There's also no solidified location for a resource hub yet. We're having ongoing conversations both within the city of Ithaca as well as with outside stakeholders about what this looks like, where this goes. I don't want to overshare because of contractual obligations with real estate groups, but I also do want to share one of the frustrating parts for me is that we've had real estate groups who won't even have conversations with us because of the type of initiatives that we're exploring. And that really limits our options, both downtown and everywhere else in the city. And so if you are one of those real estate providers, shame on you. That's ridiculous. But I really hope that people come to the table and say, and come to the table both on the real estate side and say, this is something that we're doing to really support every member of our city. I think that for a long time, there's been this perception that the people who deserve a voice are those who pay taxes. And I don't think that that's true, right? It's everybody who lives within the city of Ithaca is an Ithaca city resident and deserves to have a voice and deserves to be supported. And so if people have concerns, if people have questions or comments or changes or suggestions, please reach out. I'm here. I've gone to meetings with community members. I've gone to meetings of the Housing Justice Collective. And I would go again. I'll go any week. And I'm happy to talk this stuff through. I think this is a really important step. I think that the commission has done important work, and I hope that it continues doing this work. And I hope it actually becomes more broadly engaging publicly. I hope that we can really nail in and continue to support every member of our community. The other thing, to switch topics, ADUs, I've gone back and forth on this issue. I'll speak more about it in the ADU section, but I hear your concerns and thank you for coming tonight. I always do appreciate hearing those thoughts. On the other resolutions that were submitted tonight, member filed. For those of you who are here who don't know, the city of Ithaca has a process for filing resolutions. They first get filed to a committee meeting, and then they get talked about and discussed and collaborated on at committee meetings, and then we move them to a full vote of the Common Council, which is tonight's meeting. The resolutions 8.1, 8.2, 8.2, 8.3, and 8.4. All of those resolutions were just filed for this meeting, and I honestly feel incredibly robbed of conversation on those, including the Ithaca Green New Deal. I'm going to vote for this because I believe on it, but I think it also robs us of a conversation about what we could be doing more of, to support these initiatives. I wish that these had been filed for a committee meeting so we could have actually discussed them, and I'm sure that we will discuss them some tonight and pass them tonight, or at least some of them, but I just wanted to vocalize that. The last thing I wanted to say was multiple members of the public who spoke tonight mentioned racism and hiring practices at the city. I just want to affirm those concerns and say that I personally am incredibly dedicated to rooting out all types of racism at the city of Ithaca, figuring out where those issues lie and getting rid of them because it's unacceptable, especially in our community, as well as everywhere. So thank you for coming again, and I look forward to the discussion tonight.
Alderperson Matos.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not expect me to be next. Yes, so I would also like to thank everyone for coming out tonight and sharing your concerns with us. And I also would like to say I am 100% looking forward to being able to vote for reaffirming Ithaca's Green New Deal. And I am looking forward to the conversation that we will have tonight around that. In regards to our encampment policy, I do want to acknowledge that we aren't combating all the issues that and barriers that are in our community regarding homelessness and our homeless population. However, these are the first steps to help us continue to identify those gaps, and that's what we talked about in our committee meetings. So your guys' concerns aren't going unheard. I do just want to reaffirm that. And my last comment goes towards constituents and community members, former council members that have been using words like redlining and gentrification when describing ADUs. That's very offensive because these policies and pushing for owner occupancy policies are actually contributing to that problem and contributing to the redlining and gentrification. Gentrification has been happening in our community for years, to the point that our people of color are pretty much pushed out. So to ask the council members of color to consider an ADU policy and then bring up the systematic traumas around gentrification and redlining for us to understand is actually very offensive and brings up more traumas. Thank you.
Alderperson Letterman.
I appreciate Alderperson Matos's comments, and I too sort of abhor the suggestion that somehow redlining is good and that these policies would be some sort of productive version of redlining. I'm going to speak more to the ADUs later. I know my colleagues have heard me speak about that plenty. One thing, just going on in the community, I want to shout out is the Ithaca Teachers Association, which are bargaining for a contract right now. I know they're doing open bargaining, which anyone can watch online. It's all streamed, but just want to make sure that we, as a community, support our teachers, who I think by comparison to many of their peers are particularly low paid. My mother's a teacher, my grandmother's a teacher, so I have a lot of respect for the work they do, and just want to shout them out. Another group of employees I want to give a shout out to is last week I had the privilege of spending a shift with our sanitation crew, and I was shocked to learn that all garbage in the city, not recycling, but just general garbage, is picked up by 5 people. And so just want to give many thanks to Phil, Joe, Billy, Melinda, and Brendan. They do incredibly hard work. 4 days a week, they're picking up trash. And then on Fridays, they're filling potholes too. And they just did a remarkable job and were extremely professional and worked exceptionally hard, and just want to give them thanks. No applause.
Alderperson Brown.
I'm still a couple more things.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Was hoping some of them might be germane to the public comment. But
Oh, I'll keep moving. On the on CTAP, which is the Community Investment Incentive Tax Abatement Program, because I know we got 2 comments in. I'm going to read part of one into the record just for the public's edification. I can't read. Let me read it. Okay, I'll bring it up later. I'm opposed to the efforts to adjust CTAP here, not only because I think exactly a year ago tomorrow we had a great presentation from Tom Knipe, our Deputy Director for Economic Planning, that showed in the program brought in almost $100 million over 20 years in new tax revenue. And it also had increased the tax base by approximately $1 billion. But also just because the resolution we have is of no legal force, the CTAP is not a City of Ithaca program. We work collaboratively with the IDA, but we had a memo that was submitted that suggests that if we adopted it would end CTAP. That's not the case, and I think it's sort of misleading to the public that we would publish something and put something out there that said if we adopted this, this would end this program. I'm all in favor of changing how tax abatements work and making sure that we can incentivize density in places where it makes sense, and happy to make recommendations to it. I mean, since I'm getting quizzical looks here, I'll read the memo. Includes the line, should the resolution pass, while CTAP would no longer be in effect, the city would retain the ability to recommend projects to the IDA. That's not the case. Anyone can look up. It's section 858.15 of the general municipal law. We don't have authority to do that, and so I wanted to correct the record there. All yours.
Alderperson Brown.
I want to thank everybody who came out and made comments. This meeting tonight just really feels good. Everybody, thank you so much because there was some really important stuff brought to us, and I've heard some really important stuff come from from the floor. I want to first start out by definitely saying new what is it? The Green New Deal. The Green New Deal is very important for us to support it and constantly talk about it and bring it to other communities. I was there for Earth Day, but I didn't see a lot of people who looked like me there. And so I think it's really important how we bring it to other communities because Justice 50 does work for other communities, right? So thank you. And thank you all young people, because there was a host of young people in the comments that made me feel very proud and giddy inside. So thank y'all. I do know that I want to thank everybody who came from the Housing Justice Collective and spoke tonight. And I know, because I know it's really important. Like we know the work that everyone has done on the encampment is very important. And I don't think people were saying that it wasn't. I heard lots of compliments about it, but they talked about how we can expand it. And to say that we're doing more when some communities will not get the opportunity that many in the encampment would is not saying for somebody who know of people who are couch surfing that won't reach them as well. However, what I'm more than glad about is talking for people coming and speaking and say we want more. I think it's nothing more than to ask for more. If this is the city way of getting involved, it's important. It's important because I'm extremely happy to see this happening because I was on the council when I talked about housing for homelessness and stuff. I was told that's not our area. That's the county area. So to see that we've stepped out is very important, and I'm really grateful that I'm here to see it happening. But I do know there's more that we can do, and we need to not just because what I think a lot of people are saying that anyway. Thank you all for all the work that you do, and all we do is ask that you hear us. I spoke earlier with another council member who, I respect her highly, and I know coming from her heart is that she will keep presence of what we've been asking for, right? It was so much tonight. And I thank you, Kayla, because I couldn't have said it better about the gentrification and redlining. From the very first time I heard that, I couldn't believe that was the comparison that they used, right? So thank you so much for that. It's so much. What else did I write in here? Oh yeah, and for people coming out talking about our process and how we work with racism in the city, thank you very much because I think that's very important for us to hear because that's something we don't usually talk much about, right? We have been just going along to get along, but we really have not talked about even looking at our administrative staff and who we have as representing our city who don't look like our city. So I'm just really glad to hear that people got their eyes on it. For whatever reason, I'm glad to hear that. What else? Okay. So about CTAP, right? I'm very mixed about that, right? Because I really do $100 million over 20 years. Like that's really not a lot of money. I mean, yes, I could spend that. No, I'm just, I'm playing, but I'm grateful. But what I have seen that what CTAP has done is those projects and those apartments and those buildings that they do give tax abatement to do not benefit the majority of our community. it benefits Cornell students and other people with money, but we don't even get people, it don't even help our homeless stock. Oh, I said that wrong. But so I do believe that is something we should look at. I really do believe that getting rid of it or, yeah, I just trust Teresa. Because I know she's been doing her work for years and years and years, and she's been reminding us for years. So, yeah, I can't wait for the conversation around it. And thank everybody for coming out. I just want to tell y'all, this is what it looks like, right? This is what it's supposed to look like. Our community also being involved in this because that's the way democracy work. And we know we losing that real quick. So we need to take advantage. So thank y'all for being involved and helping us, or helping me think, right? Yeah, because sometimes I doubt myself of, am I doing what I need to be doing? And then when I see people come out and share, it says, I'm not doing it, but they are. So thank y'all. We need your voices always.
Alderperson Nguyen.
Sorry, super.
Any other hands? Trying to sneak in under the wire again. I know your style. You wait till I try to move on and then you say, I have a hand. Go ahead.
We'll have a more extensive conversation later, but since it's near the end of the night, people may not stick around. But I do want to point out that CTAP is incentivized for 100% affordable housing projects, 2 of which were part of the housing surge that took people in encampments and give them the housing. And has put $3.5 million into the Community Housing Development Fund that funds affordable housing projects. But I too look forward to the conversation later.
Alderperson St. Perez, you have the final word.
I will, of course, withhold comment on issues that are going to be addressed later within this meeting. However, I do want to just say thank you to everyone who's come out to speak, and to those of you who, especially to our young people who are coming out to speak. I believe that is incredibly important. Additionally, to questions of rights and the city protecting people's rights. That is something that is very important, especially at a time like now. And I want to emphasize, and as that is not on the immediate agenda, acknowledge that.
Thank you. With no other comment, I think I'll just note that now hearing from Alderperson Brown, I'm curious to know how much that ring is worth. All right, we will move on. May I please have somebody move the consent agenda? Moved by Alderperson St. Perez, second Alderperson Matos. All those in favor of consent? That carries unanimously, 10-0 now. And I'm sorry, I did not say this when she came in because we were in the middle of public comment, but also record reflect that Alderperson Fabrizio has joined us. With that, may I please have someone summarize and move local law? Yes, Alderperson.
I move a local law amending Chapter 186 of the Ithaca City Code, flood damage prevention. We had a presentation by our Director for Planning and Economic Development, Lisa Nicholas, about this last week. This makes mandatory changes to ensure Ithaca's participation in the National Flood Insurance Program.
Thank you, Alderperson. May I get a second? Alderperson St. Perez. As the Alderperson noted, we had a pretty robust discussion on this. I think the only thing worth adding on my part is because this is a local law, we have to do a roll call vote if there's any debate. Well, irrespective of whether there's debate. Any further comments or question on this? Crisis averted. All right, seeing no hands, I will go to a roll call vote. Alderperson Matos.
Yes.
Alderperson Brown. Alderperson Nguyen.
Yes.
Alderperson Shapiro.
Yes.
Alderperson St. Perez.
Yay.
Alderperson Keel.
Yes.
Alderperson Kumar.
Yes.
Alderperson Fabrizio.
Yes.
Alderperson Letterman.
Yes.
And the mayor votes yes. That carries 10-0 with Alderperson Haynes Sharp absent. May I have someone please move as part of our next agenda item as batched, declaration of lead agency for amendment to City Code Chapter 325. That's a volunteer. So, all right, Alderperson Letterman's going to move lead agency. You just summarize.
Sure. This is an ordinance to amend the municipal code of the city of Ithaca, chapter.
This is just a resolution declaring us lead agency. But
Yes.
yes. Yeah.
to establish this is dash declaration lead agency. Anyway, I move they're both listed as ordinances, not resolutions, but
This is
the title.
the title of the
I
thing
see.
that we're lead agency for.
This resolution declares the City of Ithaca lead agency for environmental review of the proposed ordinance.
Thank you, Alderperson. Is there a second? Second by Alderperson Nguyen. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. May I now have someone move the neg deck? Alderperson Letterman.
This resolution declares that as lead agency, the Common Council has a negative declaration of sort of, I should know the term, significant, further environmental review is unnecessary.
Is there a second? Second by Alderperson Matos. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. Now, may I have someone summarize and move the ADU ordinance? Alderperson Nguyen, who has been waiting several years for this.
I've waited 10 years for this. It's an amendment to Chapter 325 to facilitate the development of accessory dwelling units by legalizing their construction by right if they meet a number of prescribed requirements, one of which is not owner occupancy.
Slight precedential break, seconded by the mayor. Discussion. Alderperson Keel.
I feel like I just am saying the same comments over and over and over again. But a couple new comments today for those of you who have not been to one of these ADU discussions before. The first thing I'll note is that the home owner rate in City of Ithaca is significantly lower than most of the country, as well as the average in New York State. The average in New York State is about 50%. The rate in Ithaca, New York is about 28.9%. That's not surprising, right? We're a college town. It has increased by 2% in the last 20 years. So if we were talking about since COVID or right before COVID, homeownership has decreased significantly because of large buying of residential properties. I don't think that that's true. I don't think there's data to support that. The second thing I will say is, well, I'll rewind a little bit. The first thing that is frustrating me about this discussion is we've had it significantly more than we've had other, in my opinion, more pressing issues like good cause eviction. I think that was a really important issue that came before council, and I think we rushed through it very quickly. I wouldn't change my vote, but that being said, we've now had how many meetings on ADUs, and this impacts significantly less people in the city. I also think it's important to bring up that we already allow for ADUs in the City of Ithaca. And this is something that I think has not really gotten addressed in our conversations. And we already allow ADUs by owner occupancy in the City of Ithaca. In fact, if you own a home in the City of Ithaca in many areas of the city, including in Bell Sherman and most parts of Fall Creek, and you want to build an ADU, you can build an ADU currently. You just have to go to the city clerk's office and get a permit to do so. It's not as of right, but most things to do are not as of right, including in many places building a porch. So you can read through the city code. I thought maybe I would read through it, but I think that will take far too much time, and I don't think anyone will listen to me. So that being said, and I don't think that we should try to, I've said this in meetings before too, we shouldn't try to convince ourselves that this is like the silver bullet to housing. I don't think that this is going to significantly impact housing one way or another. I think a small amount of ADUs will be built year over year. And in reality, with what I said about the code already existing with ADUs, the real big change that this is bringing is that we are getting rid of the owner occupancy requirement in most parts of the city. And I think we need to be sober about that. We need to say, yeah, that's what we're doing. I'm personally okay with that. I think that decreasing the availability of people to use their property that they own to build additional housing units is not something I'm in favor of, but I also don't think that we can skirt around the issue and say that's not what we're doing. That's what we're doing. So those are my comments on ADUs. I look forward to voting for this for today after I don't know how many meetings about this. Thank you all again for coming out, and I look forward to seeing more ADUs in our community.
Alderperson St. Perez and then Shapiro.
So members of council have already heard me speak on this before. My objections and concerns are in three, I think, somewhat discrete categories. The first being a equity of access concern. I do believe that developers and other groups with experience in the housing market, experience in construction, that have gone through the initial investment costs of entering that business, or which have other sources of wealth, are significantly advantaged towards being able to access all construction generally, but especially ADUs. I hope to address this in part in the resolution that is later in our agenda. I believe that to address that concern, the city must play a role in enabling our local community members, people who live here, people who are trying to use having an accessory unit to help afford our ever increasing cost of living. We need to help those people in evening the market. That is, I believe, incredibly important. That's my first concern. My second concern is as to ensuring that if this is a policy path we are going to go down, that it is effective. And to that point, I will be making an amendment essentially calling for this to be reevaluated, this policy to be reevaluated in 5 years based on the amount of units that are supporting local community members, the amount of units that have been built generally. I can make that amendment now if this group is amenable. I do have a third point, but that can wait. I would therefore like to make an amendment that would add to the end of the ordinance, section 6, reevaluation. The city of Ithaca shall reevaluate this ordinance during the 5th year after it takes effect and evaluate the success of the ordinance based upon, in decreasing priority, the number of units on owner-occupied parcels, the number of units owned by local residents, and third, the number of total units built.
Is there a second? Second by Alderperson Shapiro. Discussion on this resolution. Alderperson Letterman, you're recognized. We are now on discussion of the amendment that is proposed. You are still next on the main motion. I have a separate list. Alderperson Letterman.
Well, I appreciate sort of the need to reevaluate policy. I don't really see the how this would be helpful for a couple of reasons. 1, 5 years from now, the council can direct staff to say they want to do a study on the number of units on owner-occupied parcels. And the number, it doesn't define what local residents mean. If someone's living in an ADU, one would assume they automatically become a local resident by virtue of having lived there. So that sort of doesn't follow. And then the total number of units built, again, future councils, well past when I turn into a pumpkin on December 31st, can then, and when Duxon and I are long gone, if he makes it that long, well, you always joke about not making it, so. All right. I don't suggest his
Let the minutes reflect that was not a threat.
Not a threat. But no, I think, look, they can go and say the number of units built is not enough. I know we're also going to have a comp plan revision that's coming down the pike in the next 5 years. So I just don't really see the benefit of this. I don't think it does a huge amount of harm, but it also, one of the 3 points is, sort of doesn't really make sense, and the other 2 are not necessarily sort of helpful, or may not be the data that future councils want in order to assess how effective this policy is.
I'll recognize the mayor next, and then Alderperson Keel. My opposition to the amendment is purely procedural, which is that, as Alderperson Keel noted, this has been something the council has been deliberating for many, many, many months. And the procedural objection I have is that because there was a public hearing on this, any substantive change to the proposed law would then set back the clock on further adoption. I am interested to know, given the sponsor's position on this, why this amendment was not brought forward until the night of the final vote. This is tantamount to moving the item back to committee, and if that's what a majority of council wishes to do, that's what they should do. But to amend this on the floor for a resolution that was sent out at 10 o'clock this morning, I'm strongly opposed to that. Alderperson Keel.
Yeah, I would hope that our planning staff reevaluates all of our city policies all the time, which I know that they do. And so I would hope that the planning staff in 5 years also is reevaluating how our policies are working. I agree with the mayor. I think we can assess this if need be in the comp plan that I look forward to working on.
Alderperson, no one else speaks to this? Alderperson St. Perez.
Just to respond to the immediate procedural issues, the intent of this is actually not to send this back to committee. I understand the concern there, but I attempted to move this issue to committee last time we discussed it with the intent of amending it at that time. This council chose not to do so. I am therefore bringing my amendments now as the next available time. I believe that that is reasonable and in accordance with our procedures. And if there is a better way that I should have brought such amendments, I am curious.
Alderperson Fabrizio.
First, I want to address whether or not it's substantive. Then I have some comments. So
Anything that's not like a typo being changed is substantive.
okay. All right. So a couple comments. So the first, whereas I think says it all. The policy is meant to provide additional dwelling units while, and this is in quotes, right, maintaining the character of an existing neighborhood. And, you know, we've heard from so many people, and these are neighborhoods that have, I would say, like the highest amount of development pressure on them in the city. And they have experienced the instability that comes with neighborhoods that change basically, you know, some of them blocks changing into like dormitories, what essentially are dormitories. So I would love to be a council that like sometimes hears what the community is saying. And I, like Patrick, I don't think that we are actually going to see some like huge amount of ADUs that come out of this. But nevertheless, I want to be a council that is responsive. And I don't think, I think seeing people who are trying to protect their neighborhoods and the stability of their neighborhoods and the traditions of their neighborhoods, I just think that framing that as an elitist thing is just plain wrong. We need all varieties of housing stock, and we should be supporting homeownership, not making it harder for people to obtain that and to live in a neighborhood where kids actually grow up together and play together. So I'd also say ADUs are basically the only effort that we have right now to help address the middle of our market. So I think ADUs are really, you know, could be really helpful for people, I've said this before, who are downsizing, who have parents who are moving here, who want to help pay for the extraordinary, ridiculous taxes that keep getting passed in this council and that have been passed in this council for the last 10 years, basically. So I think it is really important, but I also think preserving community is really important. And so I support an owner occupancy requirement. And I also support that we now, this council who would be putting this legislation in place, that we decide in 5 years, in 3 years, we want to evaluate how this is working with the owner occupancy requirement in place. Make a decision at that point. If it seems like we need to do something else, then let's reevaluate it. I'd also like to look next at how we could best turn some of our current, like really large homes into condos or into other, and other forms of group ownership. Anyway, I'd like to see this as a planning department priority. So I guess that's what I'm going to say. I support ADUs. I support residency requirement for ADUs, and I support that we should be, as a smart council, when we make decisions, we should step back and evaluate those and not count on a council, whoever that's going to be in 5 years, yes, long after you're gone. Many of us will still be here, and these neighborhoods will still be here, these neighborhoods who have for years shouldered what honestly Ithaca College should have been building, I think, on their own campus for so very long, housing for students, instead of it just becoming the burden in all of the neighborhoods. So, yeah.
Alderperson Letterman.
I'll just comment on the procedural end of this. You know, again, as we've talked about this for a long time, which is something I can address later. I had, you know, we got this at these two different proposed amendments at 10 a.m. at 5 minutes past 10 this morning. I had asked my colleagues to move this more than a year ago. I know when we were up at Southworks to
Please direct comments to the chair.
send something about, to send a proposal here about how we might change this. And I know we had talked last summer about this. And again, I would have been happy to support something and examine it if given sufficient amount of time. And especially since I know some of the opponents of this have talked about timing and how much time's been given. I don't know how we can be expected to support something that we got at 10 a.m. when we've discussed this for more than a year. It just doesn't seem reasonable, and that's another reason I'm going to oppose this. It sort of stands in the face of everything we've tried to do here, which is provide ample amounts of time for the community to comment.
If it's directed to the chair, you may reply.
If I may, as we are at this point in the process, amendments had to be made on the floor, right? That is how this works.
This is a statement from the alderperson, not a back and forth conversation. So you may make a statement, but
I also just want to say that the petition that was signed by almost 200 of my constituents, including a significant number from South Hill, which is like 100 people in South Hill signing on to something, is a significant number of the population there. At a minimum, checking in on this policy in 5 years and committing to it, I think that is a very small ask to alleviate the concerns, the severe concerns of a community.
Alderperson Brown. On the amendment, right?
Me?
On the amendment, yep.
Okay, I just want to know, like, I don't agree with this amendment in 5 years. I just can't see 5 years, like, what would 5 years do? That when the gentleman talked about what David West has talked about already, about the, how it won't really bring a lot of housing to the community. So I just need to be a little more clear about why 5 years? Why not 1 year? Like, really? What 5 years would make what difference?
You may ask that question. You can't ask it to your colleague. Again, it's not a back and forth. Any further discussion on this? Alderperson Nguyen.
I'm opposing this because I actually don't, I typically don't like considering amendments on the floor, but I don't have any philosophical opposition to it. I oppose the amendment because I just don't think it's necessary. I think in a year's time, planning staff will know exactly how many applications they've processed and can just tell us or future councils exactly what these numbers are. And we'll probably be able to evaluate it on an annual basis, not even every 5 years. And yeah, that's it. Thanks.
All right, so Alderperson Kumar, please.
I was just going to say that I understand that there's a lot of anxiety looking into the future about how this policy is going to manifest itself. But I think the way to answer that is not to overburden our planning staff, but rather to trust that they will be doing the requisite, reexamining of this policy with the best interest of the city in mind.
All right, with that, we'll turn to a vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment as moved? Those opposed? That amendment fails 3-6 because Alderperson Keel is temporarily out of the room. Back to the main motion. Alderperson Shapiro, you're recognized.
Thank you. I also think it was unfortunate that one of the public speakers used the term redlining when talking about this legislation, because that I think it really wasn't the right use of the phrase. It certainly brought up some of the things that Kayla brought up. And I think it muddied the water a little bit, because what was true for me is that there were about 200 people that were speaking in support of an owner occupancy, 200 people that lived in Ward 3. And I know a lot of my colleagues often do pay special attention to the folks that come to these meetings and the things that get said by the folks that come to speak to us. And these were 200 people that did share their concerns quite clearly, despite that one comment. But they were quite clear, and I think it's unfortunate that that their voices aren't being heard or recognized in the ways that they certainly want to be. I think one of the things I've shared with my ward over running for office and now being in office was certainly that I heard them and that I would be trying to advocate for them. But as it came close to this vote, and some of my Bell-Sherman neighbors might not agree with this point, but it became a lot more important to me to really think about the South Hill overlay and how much pressure has been put on that neighborhood, and how much change has taken place in that neighborhood, and how much we did need to consider protecting the small amount of housing stock that is available in the city of Ithaca. And while I would agree that we should be protecting all housing stock in Ithaca, what's also true about South Hill is it's a little more affordable than Bell-Sherman and some of the other neighborhoods. And what that also means is that it's a lot easier for large developers and out-of-state developers to come in and become absentee landlords and convert a really small availability of housing stock in South Hill to what might be no longer available for families. So I think that's unfortunate, and I really wish we paid more attention to specifically the needs of the South Hill overlay. I also, I've heard people talk about the poison pill, about owner occupancy, and then there was a gentleman here that was talking about that he wished we were presented with data, and I've certainly heard other folks on council talk about the need to have data-informed decisions. And I think it's unfortunate that we haven't really seen much data, because there might be some data that creating an owner occupancy limits the build of new ADUs. I think what's been pretty clearly felt by everybody is that this is really a drop in the bucket. It's not going to provide that much housing, and it's not going to provide affordable housing either. And that takes me to my main point about why I won't support this. And I just think it's been such a waste of time and resources in the city of Ithaca. I think we've talking about this pre-COVID. This is something that's taken staff time and staff prioritization for over 5 years. And it's not going to make a difference in the amount of housing we have in this community. And it's not going to bring new affordable housing into this community. So I really don't understand why the city has spent so much time pushing this policy forward. It really boggles my mind, quite honestly. What I wish they would spend time thinking about, let me backtrack from that, but I grew up in Brooklyn, and we moved a lot as we were as growing up. But my family of 3 sisters and my parents, we had a split house. Sometimes they were split both ways. It was like one house with a wall down the middle. You had people living on both sides. Sometimes you had people living on both sides, up and down. And I don't understand why we're not spending time thinking about that type of housing. Instead, we're spending 5 years talking about ADUs, something that is so negligible to the problem that exists in this community. And I really wish we would get our priorities straight and start thinking about that type of housing where families can both purchase and own, or purchase and rent, excuse me, but where there's more density within a house and not just in an apartment building. We've talked about within the CTAP conversation, all these high rises that are getting built. None of those are affordable either. So we're spending all this time thinking about different policies that don't bring about new affordable housing. They've brought about new housing at times, but there hasn't really been a lot of new affordable housing in Ithaca. And that's just unfortunate, and I can kind of read the room already here. But I really just wish as a council, we would spend a lot more time thinking about policies that make a difference. And I don't think this ADU policy is going to make a difference other than it may lead to less home ownership opportunities for families. And it may lead to more absentee landlords who are often more negligent with their properties. Thank you.
Alderperson Letterman.
Sure, I'm gonna, say a couple things to that. One is, I read the petition signed by the folks in Bell Sherman. And it's not that I don't hear it. And South Hill. I just disagree. I have a different perspective, and I disagree with that. And I, hope reasonable people can disagree. So I don't want to say those folks haven't been heard, and I appreciate them being willing to sign something and put their views forward. I just have a different view on what the ADU ordinance would do. I also agree, I'm not satisfied with how much time this has taken. I think it's taken up too much time. I think that's more a statement of the fact that there's been a lot of opposition to making even this, what I think everyone agrees is not a huge change. And it's disappointing to me is because I know, as we all agree, we have a huge affordability problem. And the way to solve that is to get more housing on the market. And if we take so long to make even these small changes to help build more housing, it's going to take it's not going to move us where we need to. I'll also say this, and again, this is, I think where reasonable people can disagree. A lot of the opposition is coming about that this is going to undermine home ownership. And I would say, we have a home ownership crisis right now. I think the biggest thing for folks is not broadly, is there a lot of home ownership, but are folks here rent burdened? Are their mortgages too high, right? And this is another small, albeit small tool by which we can address the problem of affordability. And I want to make sure that we take all those tools that we can. And I feel sort of badly to someone who said it could live in an ADU or could, maybe older person who wants to downsize and can't afford, to keep up a house and want to move into ADU. Well, yeah, but we want more home ownership. So sorry, we're not going to let you live there. We're not letting you build a house. To me, that's a bad excuse, and I don't think anyone would want to hear that. So yeah, I agree it's taken too long. I hope in the future we can move faster. I don't, attribute the blame to anyone in particular, but I think I'm in favor of making every change we can. And I will say this too, neighborhoods evolve. We have changing needs as a community. People want to live here. That's driven up the cost of housing. And it's our job, I think, to be responsible stewards of this city and say, we're going to take steps to alleviate the problems that a supply shortage has created. And so I hope to make one of those changes here and more changes in the future. But I hope folks recognize that neighborhoods evolve, and I'd rather have evolving neighborhoods where people aren't rent burdened and aren't paying 50% of their income to go into renting homes and have few options than ones where neighborhoods are changing in small ways, but we have more options for folks and they aren't as rent burdened. So that's why I'm in favor of this.
Alderperson Nguyen.
So one of the reasons why we are spending time on ADUs is that last year we set as two of our high priority housing related legislative priorities were STRs and ADUs. Back in 2019, one of the barriers to getting ADU legislation passed was concern about STRs. And so there was a connection between the two, that we didn't want to do, at least a number of members of council didn't want to legalize ADUs until an STR regulation policy was in place, which we did last year. And then that enabled ADUs to happen. It did happen slower than we want, but trust me, having been here for a decade, that's the norm. Things take a while. With regard to private equity ownership, one of our constituents did an analysis of how many houses in the city were actually owned by LLCs. It was a pretty negligible number. I just don't think that it's a particularly lucrative way to capitalize on their investments by building ADUs. I want to see owner occupancy strengthened through rezoning, and we have this big grant to fundamentally redo our zoning. I really hope that we're going to legalize townhouses and row homes incentivize the construction of condos. These are all paths to homeownership equity production that are suitable for an urban environment like Ithaca. Also, when this council was presented with ADU information, we were told, so I don't actually know what will happen. It may be negligible, it may be very productive. Los Angeles, staff told us, 22% of all housing now is ADUs. In Seattle in 2019, they saw an 80% surge in ADU construction. So we may see significant ADU production. With regard to enabling people to actually build them, there are a few fronts. When staff polled us last year about 2 opt-in tax exemptions, I think they got a positive reception. So I think this council is supportive of opting into a tax exemption for the property owner for the first 5 years. It's 100% for the first 5 years on just the improvement, and then a gradual decrease over the next 5 years. And then a specific opt-in for a tax exemption when your parent or grandparent lives in the unit. And that's for as long as that person lives in the unit. I think that's a great incentive that incentivizes family ties. And finally, I forget the amount, but $20,000-ish that the city has received in order to develop a pre-approved design catalog to accelerate permitting. Staff has already started thinking about that. They've got potential cities that are willing to lend their plans to us. So that's another way in which we're going to help to enable the construction of these. So I'm excited to support this tonight.
Thank you, Alderperson. Next, I have Alderperson Brown. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to just say that I don't, when we talk about how long this has been we've been working on it on the council for the over 5 years, it just makes me think of all other things we've been working for over 5 years. Reimagining public safety, the encampments. And what does that mean? Does it mean that we just can't rush and do something just to do it because this is what you want, right? And so I'm so happy about seeing 200 people signed this petition, and that means a lot to me in my decision. But I'm also thinking about how can't we talk 5 years about how to make those communities accessible for poor, marginalized Black and brown people to move in them, right? Like, how about a 5-year conversation about how they open up access to individuals who normally can't live in those communities, right? So I just I'm gonna listen to my council people here and make my decision. What hits my heart. Thank you.
I'll just recognize myself before I recognize repeat hands. Just quickly say, to the point, I want to agree with a colleague who mentioned that the speed with which we can do some housing reform things could be improved. I would certainly agree. For any council members who might support a future consideration of a revision of the city's mandatory parking minimums, you'll be very surprised, I think, to see the amount of pushback that council will receive once that hits the agenda. Just for the record, I know Nikki's in the audience, but I'm fully in support of repealing those. I'll let them make up their own minds later. But I think this is something that staff has worked really hard on because it is actually a way to address this issue, basically for all the points that Alderperson Fabrizio raised, except for where I respectfully disagree with her on the owner occupancy requirement. This is a way of trying to thread the needle on building our housing stock, doing gentle infill in a way that doesn't actually undermine the character of our neighborhoods. And there's reams of data. I do hear that there's always the opportunity to say we could have more data, but we've received pretty substantial data. Council over and above that has received over the last 18 months spammed articles from me about the value of ADUs on the council listserv. And it's either going to have a modest impact on our housing stock or it will pose an existential threat to all city neighborhoods. It can't possibly be both of those things at the same time. So it's just, it's not going to have the effect that folks are fearful that it will. If you look at all of the other cities that have adopted non-poison pill ADUs, they get robust ADU development without destroying traditional neighborhoods. I hear the objections. I don't agree with them. I don't think they're supported by the evidence, and I am very excited to bring this to a vote after we can conclude debate. Alderperson St. Perez.
Just to finish the concerns that addressing the concerns that I have, I am concerned this may undermine existing city policy within the South Hill overlay. David alluded to this, and I would therefore like to amend in addition to section C, which would require in the South Hill overlay, the owner must use the parcel as a primary residence.
Is there a second on that motion? Moved by Alderperson seconded by Alderperson Fabrizio.
If I can explain slightly further.
So you're recognized.
Thank you.
I just want to start taking hands on the Second Amendment is all. Yeah, go ahead. Not the Second Amendment. I don't want to be here any longer than we have to be. Go ahead.
I consider it a privilege to represent South Hill. It is a community that is astonishingly still reasonably affordable in Ithaca. A lot of the folks there are struggling to make ends meet, and every year that I go around knocking on doors in South Hill, a couple of the houses, the person tells me, look, I can't afford to stay in Ithaca any longer. I am concerned about the possibility of adding pressures up to South Hill, and the possibility that that will severely impact an area that is already under extreme stress.
Next on that amendment is Alderperson Letterman and then Alderperson Matos.
I understand, again, I feel intimately the issues of housing stress and pressure, and certainly the constituents that Alderperson Fabrizio and I represent in Cornell Heights and Fall Creek feel the same. I don't think that certain parts of the city should get special treatment. And certainly I think it looks really bad that this is the wealthiest and, dare I say, whitest part of the city should get a special zone that says that they get to keep their neighborhoods and treat them differently than the rest of the folks here. And, look, I could talk to my constituents in Cornell Heights and say, you all, I think are certainly more burdened by, as we call it, sort of transitioning neighborhoods, so to speak, in terms of students coming in than anyone in South Hill is, or in Bryant Park is. And no one's asking for that there. And I feel, we cannot, one of the big flaws of our housing and one of the things that's led to enormous amount of inequity is the fact that we slice and dice our cities into very specific zones. I mean, we have more than 40 zones when you count overlays here. And that increases the cost of building housing. It keeps some people in certain neighborhoods and other people out of other neighborhoods. And I just don't think it's fair or reasonable to say we're going to have a special zone where some people get to live and play by their own special set of rules that everyone else doesn't. And now if this were, a natural area, I'd say, okay, we don't want to build housing there, but it's not. It's another neighborhood in the city. And they should have to bear the burden of having more housing to accommodate our growing population, just like everybody else. So I'm opposed to this amendment for those reasons.
Alderperson Matos.
Thank you, Alderperson Letterman, for your remarks. And I'm pretty sure I asked this question before, so I'm just going to re-ask this question. What is the difference between a developer coming in and buying the property and just literally demolishing it and then building up multiple units to sell to college students compared to a developer buying a house in an ADU? Can that happen? Like, can't they just buy the property and bulldoze it and then just build up? Okay. So it has, and okay, I rest my case.
Alderperson Shapiro is next, and then Alderperson Brown. Oh, okay.
Just real quickly, I think it's regrettable that my colleague wanted to bring up race in the conversation. I think we don't know any demographics about Ward 3 compared to other wards and which ward is the whitest versus other wards. I just think your other points were well taken. You didn't have to make that into the conversation, and I think it's regrettable.
Alderperson Brown. Change your mind.
I thank you for bringing that up, because a lot of times we avoid that conversation, and that is a conversation that should be always asked, because in reality, it always, what you said is really true. Those are segregated communities pretty much that we do not talk about. And why is it that, okay, so, but once again, I'll thank you for that comment, because many times, and I just experienced this in another meeting where I wanted to bring up about race, and I was told, no, that's racist. It's obvious they don't know the understanding of race, but I thank you for bringing that in, because we do keep that silent when we're talking.
Alderperson Keel.
Yeah, thank you. I don't fully agree with Alderperson Shapiro, but I do think that that was a little bit out of pocket. I represent a community, College Town, which has no cornerstone businesses and almost is completely housing. There is one incredibly expensive grocery store. And I think that one of the things that, from my perspective, College Town needs is more cornerstone businesses and more development, more community development in that area. And I recognize that South Hill doesn't necessarily have those amenities, or Bell Sherman doesn't have those amenities. But I think that, and I've heard this from residents that I've talked to, the few remaining residents in College Town in my ward, I believe 16 of them exactly. There's not many people left because they've had to move. Their plots have been redeveloped. Their houses have been turned into student housing. You can walk around College Town and see this. So I think that the fear of college student pressure is real. That's not something that isn't real, and it's certainly real in South Hill, and it's certainly real in Bell Sherman and Bryant Park. And to pretend it's not real is kind of silly. So I sympathize with the concerns of those communities and those community members. That being said, I don't think that the ADUs will have the effect that it is, and I also agree with Kayla's point that I think the real threat to those communities is a developer coming in and buying the house and bulldozing it and building something that is tailored towards college students with a bunch of small one-bedroom units. We see this happening in College Town. We see development of units that basically try to maximize the number of students they can pack into one area. And I want to see livable communities where you have college students and residents and employees of Cornell and Cayuga Med and all the other employers in the city like living together, and walkable communities and thriving communities with increased development, increased economic output. And I don't think that ADUs will have the impact of decreasing that. And if anything, I think they will have the impact of increasing that by creating infill housing that provides spaces for people, diverse spaces for people to live. And so I'm going to vote against this amendment, and I'm going to continue to vote for the ADU legislation.
Alderperson Fabrizio.
I just want to go back to the first whereas in the resolution. And again, I think it says
I'm
it-
sorry, this is on the amendment. The Alderperson should.
Okay.
I understand the frustration, Alderperson, but we have to. You want to be added to the list for the main motion? There we go. Anyone else on the amendment that Alderperson St. Perez has moved? All right, then we'll bring that to a vote. Alderperson St. Perez, I was looking right at you. Didn't
Sorry,
Go ahead.
never mind. I need to raise my hand higher next time. I apologize. I just want to clarify that within the South Hill overlay, as I understand it, it is not possible to buy a property, demolish it, and replace it with two new houses. That is one of, two new buildings. As I
Respectful reminder that we're not engaging in a back and forth, Alderperson.
And of course, this policy would not undo that. I'm just concerned that it undermines the existing city policy. I will say that also just bothers me on the scale of, it always feels weird when it feels like the city is kind of working against itself a little bit.
With that, we'll turn to a vote on the amendment moved by Alderperson St. Perez. All those in favor of the second amendment that was moved on this? All those opposed? That fails 3-6 with Alderperson Kumar temporarily out of the room. To the main motion, Alderperson Fabrizio, you're recognized.
Yeah, I just want to say, go back again to the first whereas that I think says it all. The policy is meant to provide additional dwelling units while maintaining the character of an existing neighborhood. And the reason that so many people signed a petition is because they have lived through changes, very significant changes in their neighborhood. And, you know, people who maybe haven't lived here as long, or if you're not familiar with that neighborhood, I have never lived on, well, actually, I have lived on South Hill. It was one of the few places first places I lived when I moved here. I know a lot of people who also live on South Hill, and I walk up there a lot. And there are really significant changes. They're big buys, and houses being demolished and turned into student housing. And so their fears are real. And I don't, what I think I'm really having a lot of trouble with is this sort of palpable disdain for homeowners. And I think we really need to change that narrative. I don't like that homeowners in the city, and it comes up in a lot of different ways, are really treated, you know, like they're this underrepresented voice in this community that doesn't count. Long-term residents in this community are a very big part of the bedrock of this community. They raise their children here. They participate in civic life. They start neighborhood traditions. They are, you know, major volunteers in all kinds of communities and all kinds of organizations across the community. And it really troubles me that we are being so unresponsive to so many people. And I also just want to take a moment to say that I really echo David's comments earlier about the city spending this much time on this. There is no way that this is going to lower housing costs. I don't think there's any way to lower our housing costs except by doing a responsible budget that can help lower the property taxes. We're going to build housing here. This will always be a desirable place for people to be. Housing will always be really expensive here. I think we are, if you believe that this is going to lower housing costs, that is a fallacy. I just absolutely do not believe that we are going to see those kinds of changes here, no matter how much housing we come up with. That's just not happening. And the sooner that people also understand that everybody here pays taxes, whether you're a renter or a homeowner, you are paying taxes, and the amount of taxes that you pay are directly related to the budgets that legislators make in every place that we have, in the city, in the county, and the school district. So I also would say that South Hill, Clyde, is certainly not the wealthiest part of the city. And in fact, it is one of the more affordable places for people to buy single-family homes. And I just, again, you know, I want to underscore how disappointing it is to me that to feel that, you know, this has come up in other conversations that we've had over these last 14 months, just about homeowners and the sort of disdain that I think they're treated with, and it's troubling. And I would like to see us be more responsive.
Alderperson Brown.
I just have to say, as someone who's rented pretty much all my life, never owned a home, that's been my choice. Some people, it's not, because they're told about this American dream and owning a house. I have never felt that someone owning a house was a problem. I felt it was a choice. And usually it's a choice of those who can afford it, right? And those who can't. And that's why I thank you for your comment. And that's why, but what bothers me a lot with this, maintaining their character. And what that says to me is, let's keep it like it is. And unless you are someone who are other, you don't see how that looks when you say maintaining it. It doesn't say open to diversing our community or making sure. But when I go through those communities, I do not see them diverse. So when we say maintaining the character, can someone but just tell me, what does that mean? That means keeping our same people, our same kids, so yeah, that's for me. Thank you.
Alderperson St. Perez, you're recognized.
And just finishing off my third point, I do believe that the communities directly adjacent to the universities are under unique housing pressure. And for that reason, I'd like to bring an amendment. This one's rather long. I sent it around earlier. If someone who is not as slow of a speaker as me would like to speed read it, they'd be welcome. Otherwise, I will read it.
Both of my devices are dead, so I'm gonna need you to read.
Understood. Apologies.
He's moving another amendment. We didn't vote on. We did. We voted on 2 of them so far.
Yeah.
But people have been popping in and out of the room as they are wont to do.
We've been voting on stuff. Clyde, okay. This is in addition to section C. In the Bryant Park neighborhood, with boundaries defined as starting at the intersection of Bryant Ave and Dryden Road. The boundary proceeds east along Dryden Road to the intersection with Cornell Street, then south on Cornell Street to Miller Street, then east on Miller Street to the East Ithaca Recreation Way, then proceeds southeast along the East Ithaca Recreation Way to the southeast border of the city of Ithaca, then southwest across the city of Ithaca boundary line to Route 79. The boundary then proceeds northwest along Route 79 to Giles Street, then west along Giles Street to the intersection with Water Street, then north along Water Street back to Route 79, then northwest on Route 79 to Mitchell Street, then east on Mitchell Street to Delaware Avenue, then north on Delaware Avenue to the intersection with Bryant Avenue. The boundary then continues north on Bryant Avenue to the intersection with Dryden Road. Within or adjacent to these boundaries, the owner must use the parcel as a primary residence. If someone was confused by that description, I do have a map if people are curious.
Is there a second? Second by Alderperson Fabrizio. Alderperson Letterman, you're recognized.
To raise a point of order here. We're trying to adopt something to put the language in that isn't an actual meets and bounds description. Like, it needs to include the lengths between things. It doesn't say it's the center line of the road versus the edge of the right of the way of the road. There are parcels. I looked at a map briefly, but there are parcels that cross over these lines. It's just not clear. I wouldn't want to put this language into city code without it really being clear. I know there's a map, but that also isn't included in the actual ordinance.
Yield back to me. Okay, what? Yield back to me.
I yield back to the mayor.
I would like to ask the sponsor of this amendment if the city attorney's office has reviewed the text.
It has not.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion on this amendment? All right, those in favor of the amendment as moved by Alderperson St. Perez? Those opposed? That amendment fails 2-2. Good Lord, if you all could just stay in your seats for like one meeting. It's truly wild. Or request a reset, right? But whatever. 2-8, thank you. 2-6, 2-6, right, there's 8 of us here. 2-6. Amendment fails. Any further discussion on this item?
I call the question.
Is there a second? Seconded by Alderperson Letterman. All those in favor? That's not, asking a question is not a point of information. That's just a question. All those in favor of calling the question? So the deputy clerk can see them. Those opposed? The motion fails 4-5. Alderperson Fabrizio, you're recognized.
I didn't see maximum lot coverage on here, and I just wanted to know how we're ensuring that we're not making stormwater runoff worse. I mean, I saw that the 800 square foot, but what percentage coverage of the lot would be allowed to be built on?
Recognize.
I think, this is particularly of interest to people who are in the flats, right?
You're
who
going to
are-
recognize the deputy of Director of Planning and Development so she can respond.
So lot coverage varies by zone, and it ranges anywhere in the zones that are applied between 20 and 50% of the lot. That is not proposed for being changed right now, so the existing lot coverage requirements will still apply.
So like, for instance, in Fall Creek, where in the flats that are more prone to flooding, if we had like a big flurry of development of ADUs, how are you thinking that might potentially add to any storm water problems that we are already seeing?
So there's still the stormwater management that we have in place. It's not, it would be treated the same way as if someone was adding an addition to their home that would equal the same amount of lot coverage. It's, in terms of this creating more than an addition, I don't believe that's the case. And we're not requiring parking for these so that it wouldn't add to impervious paving on the site.
Right. Any further discussion on this? We're going to go to a roll call vote at the request of the deputy clerk. Alderperson Matos.
Yes.
Alderperson Brown. Alderperson Nguyen.
Yes.
Alderperson Shapiro.
No.
Alderperson St. Perez.
Nay.
Alderperson Keel.
Yes.
Alderperson Kumar.
Yes.
Alderperson Fabrizio.
No.
Alderperson Letterman.
Testor Christum Dominum. Oh, we're not voting on the next pontiff? I vote yes on the ADU ordinance.
And the mayor votes yes. So this is adopted. Pierre, you want to do your standard thing?
Thank you.
I move for a 5-minute recess.
Is there a second? Shapiro, all those in favor? All those in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you. We have a 5-minute recess. We'll be back in session at 8:58.
Yes, upstairs. I think they're. I played with audience a lot. I played with audience.
No, you had your interview today, didn't you? I haven't gotten the results. So, no, you wouldn't be able to be in there anyway. Right? Because I don't. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Thank you. Hey, yeah, I mean, other than the College of Cardinal jokes. We have completed 2 of the voting items on tonight's agenda. May I have someone please move the sale of 205 West MLK? Alderperson St. Perez, please summarize and move.
This is a resolution that sells 205 West MLK Street to INHS.
Is there a second? Second by Alderperson Matos. Any discussion on this? Great. All those in favor? That carries unanimously, with the record reflecting that Alderperson Shapiro has left for an illness, which means that this passes 9-0. May I have someone move the lease extension at 506? Alderperson St. Perez.
This extends the lease at 506 First Street for the, it's the Child Center, correct?
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderperson Matos again. Any further discussion on this? Alderperson Fabrizio.
Am I allowed to ask a couple questions?
If typically, yes. If they're germane to the item, if you would like to know who the new pope is, as Alderperson Letterman noted, we don't know that yet.
I just wanted to ask, because I'm sure there must be like huge, enormous wait lists for this childcare center. Do city residents get any sort of preferential like treatment for this, or is it just open to whoever gets there first? Does anybody know that? Yeah, I'm
But
asking.
the child care center itself?
Yeah. About the childcare center. I mean, because it's obviously, it's like subsidized by the city in some way, right? So I was just trying to understand a little bit more about like the users, who are the users of the childcare center, and do city residents have any?
Just so for the public's edification, only know this because of obviously my day job. Per my understanding, the drop-in center is open to all residents. There is not a preference on city residents. And I can't speak on the city subsidies, but from what it sounds like is that it's just a lease rental agreement, right?
Right, at $1 per year. So there's a subsidy, right? So
Yeah,
that's
but
why, that's why I was asking. Sorry, it was a crosstalk.
That's okay.
Thank you for answering that.
I was distracted by the cookies anyway, Margaret. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor? That carries 9-0. Then may I have someone please move the pilot encampment policy? Alderperson Keel, please summarize and move.
Yes, this is adopting the pilot encampment policy as attached in the resolution. It outlines some possible paths forward as well as the work of the committee thus far. There are no actionable items on the policy tonight. Those will come before council in future capital projects, for example, will come before council in future sessions.
Seconded by Alderperson Matos. Alderperson Keel.
Yes, I just wanted to follow up on what I was just talking about, but didn't think maybe it was germane for moving the actual motion. This document represents the work of a committee that is involved community stakeholders, council people, and has had conversations with the county as well as other outside groups, but certainly is not comprehensive in its scope to addressing the problems in our community associated with homelessness and the encampments. I think it's important to recognize that. And I also think it's important that I right now reaffirm my commitment to increasing public engagement towards addressing these issues, making sure that we're reevaluating and continually evaluating the goals of our program and what the city will and can do. So I look forward to those continued conversations. I look forward to increased public engagement on all topics, but especially this one. And I look forward to working with my colleagues as we continue to address these issues and take major steps forward for both the city and for our community members.
Thank you, Alderperson. I have Alderpersons Matos and Fabrizio.
Yeah, and I just wanted to emphasize something that Alderperson Kuehl just said at the end of his comments, which is that the working group is going to continue to meet if council passes it tonight, that it does not end there. We're in continuous conversations. And from my understanding and on my own opinion, I enjoy being a part of that working group. And I'm sure all the other members also do enjoy and look forward to our now, I think, bi-weekly meetings, but weekly meetings at one point.
Alderperson Fabrizio.
I wanted to ask if I might be able to make like a friendly sort of amendment to one of the resolves.
You may move something, yes.
Okay. I wanted to include language that says that the City of Ithaca Common Council requests periodic updates related to, I wanted to add, partnership resources in front of that, because I know that the deputy city manager and others are engaged in talking with the county. And I want to ensure that we are kept up to date about those serious conversations that we will be having about how to share in the responsibility of this.
Alderperson Keel.
I was just going to second that amendment.
Any discussion on the amendment? It's been seconded by the mover, but yep.
I was just going to say I support this. I think that continuing update and the more public engagement and the more information we can have come before council, the better. All in favor of taking steps towards collaboration between other outside groups, governmental outside groups also. So I will be supporting this amendment.
Alderperson St. Perez.
I completely agree. Intermunicipal cooperation is the way forward.
Alderperson Brown.
No, I appreciate that amendment, but I would like it to be, so can I change the amendment? Because I would like it to also mention community members. I'm not clear how long this group will be together. I think what I've read is a year or continuous, you know, and how in the work that community, because a lot of these groups don't necessarily represent community members, right? And how, yeah, I think you said it, but how to add community members with lived experience being involved in that, like they don't have to come to every meeting every other week, but how y'all may do a quarterly something and invite community members. I said a whole lot, I know, but that's just something I wanted to just put out there.
So was that just in the, there was no formal motion there though, correct, Alderperson? Okay, okay. I was getting a visual cue from the deputy clerk for clarity. All right, so all those in favor of Alderperson Fabrizio's amendment as moved and seconded? Carries unanimously. All those in favor of adopting the report as amended? I'm sorry, adopting the resolution as amended to adopt the report? That carries unanimously. Alderperson Letterman, please move labor liaison resolution.
Yes, I'm going to move the labor liaison resolution, and based on conversations with the city manager and our assistant city attorney, Catherine Muskin, I'm going to make some amendments. So should I just,
You can actually just move it as amended if it's,
I can just move it as amendment. I don't have to read them out. I sent it around by email and it was-
just read the entire thing as amended.
okay.
Right, but like you can, as the main motion, you can just move the thing you just
Okay.
moved.
So I am moving, whereas the Common Council established the position of labor liaison on January 4th, 2023 by resolution. Whereas the, can I read this fast?
Well,
You-
for the public too.
Okay. I mean, I don't trust me. Whereas the position of labor liaison was created to provide the Common Council with an adequate understanding of the status of the city's labor relations management, potential financial implications of the city's collective bargaining for budgetary purposes. Whereas the resolution clarifies the obligations and responsibilities of the labor liaison, and now be it therefore resolved, the resolution adopted by the Common Council on January 4th, 2023, entitled Approval of Labor Liaison is hereby repealed. Resolved, the mayor shall designate a labor liaison who shall serve at the pleasure of the mayor, and resolved, the labor liaison shall, 1, observe the negotiation of collective bargaining agreements, 2, serve as a representative on behalf of the Common Council for matters related to collective bargaining and labor relations, including for the purpose of information gathering, 3, not report in the course of his or her duties to represent the city or the city manager, and resolve the labor liaison may, at his or her discretion, but subject to the advice of the city attorney, attend hearings or grievances arising from collective bargaining agreements held before the city manager, arbitrators. I so move.
Is there a second? Second by Alderperson Nguyen. I would offer, I think this actually does qualify as a friendly amendment, if we could just change all instances of his or her to their, just to be more inclusive.
Oh, sure. Yep. Friendly amendment.
Hold on, seconder? Friendly to you? Okay.
I'll send this to Shania.
Alderperson Fabrizio, you have your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, what would be the proposed term for this? Like 1-year term or?
That's a good point. Did you have, was there clarity? Because the old resolution, it's an annual appointment.
Yeah, this is just open-ended.
That's what I thought. Why would it be any different than any other term appointment?
Well, appointments now are open-ended, right? Like, I didn't need to be reappointed to the SJC.
All the person, same press.
At least some of them are not open-ended. For example, like appointments to outside groups usually require being re-upped every year. I know that's the case for the appointments that I have.
I'm tired, so you can tell we're loosey-gooseying on the floor here. But Alderperson, you're correct in that, like, you represent the city as a member on TCOG, but my nomination of you to TCOG, which is ratification by council, is a city's nomination of you to that board. They select you for that term, so it's very different than, like, this is an internal, and so strictly speaking, the Alderperson is correct. Like, the existing labor liaison position is one that the mayor just appoints at will.
Understood. Thank you for the clarification.
Alderperson Fabrizio.
Yeah, so if part of the point of this is to, I think, keep council better informed, partly. I mean, that's what I think should be one of the main objectives of this, because I feel like we're pretty much in the dark about any of these things. I'm actually not really clear, and I do have questions, and I know it's not going to be germane to the resolution.
Not going to ask though.
But
right?
I do
Nice.
mention, I'm not asking the question, but I'm just going to say it's relevant to.
As long as it's relevant. No,
It is, it is.
No, hold on. Jokes aside, as long as it's relevant in a way that does not compromise confidentiality of collective bargaining.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just so we could better understand, like, how the labor, like, who's giving direction to the city's labor negotiator about the negotiating terms, limits, like, who's making financial decisions. Would any of this information, like, what would come back to council from this position? Like, what would the person be reporting back to council? Because I feel like this is a really black hole for us. Like, we don't have any information. I know that we use an outside attorney now to negotiate the contracts, and I feel like, I mean, our budget is made up, 70% of our budget is salaries, right? Salaries and benefits. So it's a really huge piece of what we do, but I feel like we are totally disconnected from it. So I'm wondering if you envision this role filling that void a bit.
Sure, I'll answer that with three different things. One, I think that was part of the original intention, was to get, when we had back in early 2023 and 2022, a lot of sort of folks come forward. It was in part, because there was that issue of the distance between council and what was going on there. The second part of that, I think, is the labor liaison has to remain sort of neutral, right? So it's not they don't have any say in terms of what happens with collective bargaining or what's brought up. It's purely, as it mentioned, to observe the negotiation of the collective bargaining agreements. But third, I would say, certainly when we go into existing executive sessions, bring that up. The other thing too is, I mean, in theory, at any point, council can go into executive session to discuss collective bargaining, and the labor liaison at that point would be allowed to provide updates on what they have seen or what's going on, what information they may have gathered.
I want to recognize Alderperson Brown, and I can come back to you. Yes, please.
My question, and I think you kind of answered it, because I remember, the whole, this place being flooded with employees of the city who had came and told us some things, and we were like, what are you talking about? So I'm kind of but you explained it. In executive session, these things we could ask for the person. Okay. Yeah.
Alderperson Fabrizio.
So I was just going to ask, if you'd be open to a friendly addition here on the resolved, that the liaison would report to council areas of disagreement and consensus, and make a sort of regular report during a negotiation period, so that council can be better informed on the process. And obviously, it would need to be in an executive session, I'm assuming. but I think that it should be drafted as part of the responsibility of this position if we're going to have a special.
So you're making a formal motion?
Yes, I am.
Then what's the verbatim language you'd like to insert?
If you could insert here, I would suggest.
Okay.
Vote on this. On resolved one, observe.
Your microphone's not on.
This would be, tell me if this is what you had in mind. Resolve, the labor liaison shall, one, observe the negotiated collective bargaining agreements, and the new language would be, and report regularly on the same to the common council.
Perfect. Is there a second? Second by Alderperson Keel. All those in favor of the amendment as moved?
I apologize. I just want to clarify, is there any way that,
Proceed, hold on. I need to figure out, if I've called a vote, what do I have to do? Can I have unanimous consent to resume discussion? Any dissent? None. Alderperson St. Perez.
is there,
It wasn't adopted yet because it's no. It's a regular amendment. It's not
it's a
friendly.
regular amendment.
Friendly is for like very narrow, like changing the grammatical.
I just want to clarify that such reports would not in any way compromise our negotiating position, and I'd like to look at folks from the administration to answer that.
What's the question?
I mean, so assuming that everyone on council would uphold their obligation to maintain confidentiality from an executive session, then I don't see that it would necessarily impair the negotiating sessions, but that's the answer.
I mean, I guess another concern that I have is council receiving reports and pressuring the administration in certain ways about an ongoing discussion that our negotiators are having, if that's making any sense.
I'll recognize myself here and say that I think I understand the alderperson's concern under the old system, but the administration reports to council. And so council should be providing normatively direction to the administration on what the parameters are. So I don't know that I recognize the empirical realities that you note are still there, but in my mind, under the current form of government, they would be more proper than they would under the previous.
Yeah, you've convinced me. I just wanted to voice that concern.
Any further discussion? Oh, I'm sorry. So voting on Alderperson Fabrizio's amendment, all those in favor? Unanimous. Voting on the main motion, all those. Voting on the main motion, all those in favor? That carries unanimously. Alderperson St. Perez, would you like to move your CTAP resolution?
Absolutely. This resolution would end the city's sending recommendations to the IDA and would also initiate a process to reevaluate our goals and what we request from the IDA.
Is there a second? Seconded by Alderperson Fabrizio. Alderperson Keeley recognized.
I move that we table this till a committee meeting.
You refer it to a committee meeting?
Yes, the committee meeting next month.
Might I suggest the language previously of a committee meeting next month at the discretion of the mayor based on the schedule of the
Yes,
committees?
that is fine.
Great. Second, Alderperson Matos. We have like a 9-person meeting every month to try to figure out where to put these things. The discussion on the amendment, Alderperson Keel.
Just for Shaniqua, you got it? No discussion. I call the question on this motion.
Before you, okay, okay. Is there a second on calling the question? No. Motion fails. All those in favor of the resolution, all of the motion. It would be so great if you would just put your hand up when you have to speak before the very last second. Yes. Alderperson St. Perez, you're recognized to speak on the motion.
As I noted in the memorandum I sent around earlier, I am fully open to this moving to committee. I'm just very excited that we are having this discussion, and I believe it is an important one.
Alderperson Keel.
Yes, I'll just respond to that by saying I think it's incumbent on us as council members that unless something is incredibly urgent, we should be filing resolutions and all pieces of legislation to committee meetings to start with, instead of to the main meeting of the month. I would hope that we all do that unless, of course, there's something of extreme importance that needs to get member filed onto a resolution. But again, as I stated at the top, I'm going to make this motion for each consecutive resolution, except for if the Ithaca Green New Deal piece of legislation, if Mr. St. Perez can make a very good argument about why it is here today versus at a committee meeting. So that's my reasoning.
Weren't you calling the question? I'm just teasing. All those in favor of moving this to committee at the mayor's discretion? Those opposed? That carries 8-1 with Alderperson St. Perez against. Alderperson St. Perez, Ithaca Green New Deal resolution, please summarize and move.
Yes, this is a resolution that reaffirms Ithaca's commitment to the Green New Deal, as we have passed it in the past. And I want to note that I am bringing this on behalf of the Sustainability and Climate Justice Commission, which as a commission cannot actually bring legislation to us as they are an
Is there
advisory
a second?
body.
Second by Alderperson Matos. I'll recognize myself first and say that to Alderperson's point, I largely agree with Alderperson Keel's point about procedure. Here, the Alderperson is bringing a resolution at the mayor's request following a committee meeting where we discussed an advisory resolution that was brought forward by the Sustainability and Climate Justice Commission. And so in this instance, although I had hoped we would have gotten it at our next committee meeting, I do think council has discussed this. And for that reason, I specifically will be supporting the resolution as written. Any further discussion? Alderperson Fabrizio.
I just have a question. When are we updating our goals? Because
Well, that is not germane.
well, it's germane in that the language on here that's part of this is not something that is realistic, right? We're in 2025. So I'm just wondering why we wouldn't make some kind of amendment.
Sorry, your colleagues are jumping out of their skin.
I mean, I don't actually know how much, I know that we've made changes with the vehicle fleet, right? But I don't know how much that's reduced our emissions. I don't know, meet the electricity needs of government operations with 100% renewable electricity by 2025. That's what's in here.
That is, so respectfully, that is, the Alderperson has brought a motion to reaffirm.
Yep.
You are
aspirational goals.
You are providing a counter viewpoint of the feasibility. You are well within your rights to vote against it, but it is not, unless you were to propose an amendment to the Alderperson's member filed resolution, it's not that there is nothing to substantively debate on that issue other than you rightly noting that yes, it is 2025, but I'm not taking a normative position on this. I just your comment should be directed to the Alderperson as to.
I just want to say that I just want the record to reflect these are aspirational goals, right? Because then we hear from so many people who then say, you're not doing anything to meet these goals. And I just want to be really clear. These are amazing aspirational goals. It is 2025. We will not be able to meet these goals. And I'm not saying that I don't support everything that we're doing to move us in the right direction. I just thought that since we're reaffirming, maybe we would make an adjustment on the language. But I'm fine with it, just understanding that it's aspirational. It was aspirational. I don't know if it can still be since we're in the middle of 2025, but.
Before Alderperson Keel falls out of his skin, I'll recognize him.
Yes, I just wanted to note that one of our wonderful staff members and recent recipient of a very prestigious award noted at a previous Common Council meeting that it's actually best practice to not change the goals of our city so that we can, for the record, keep a record of where we're at and where we failed and where we're still working to improve. So I'm firmly against changing those on the recommendation of our staff. on this issue.
Alderperson St. Perez and then Alderperson Brown.
I mean, Alderperson Keel just made my point for me.
Alderperson Brown.
Margaret just made my point. If we're already in 2025, why are we asking, why are we saying this is an aspiration for 2025? It could be changed. We're not in 2020, it's not, this is the middle of 2025. Is it happening or what? So we can, that's my question.
Yeah, I do think that point was just addressed by our two previous colleagues. Are we ready to move this to a vote? Because I know we could keep talking if we'd like to, but I think Alderperson St. Perez.
I mean, just briefly, I do think us just shifting our own goalposts based on how far we can run or how far we've been able to run, that doesn't seem like a good approach, even outside of the esteemed recommendations of our staff.
All those in favor of the resolution as moved? That carries unanimously. Your final member filed resolution, Alderperson, if you please summarize and move.
Yes, this is a resolution that is in support of accessibility for the building of accessory dwelling units within the city of Ithaca as a follow-up to the ordinance that we just passed.
Is there a second? Second by Alderperson Fabrizio. Alderperson Keely recognized.
I move that this is tabled at the discretion of the mayor to the next available committee meeting.
Is there a
that
second?
he sees
Second by
fit.
Alderperson Kumar. Any discussion on that? Alderperson St. Perez.
I believe that this is immediately relevant to the ordinance that we just passed. I know that I, and I believe many other people within my ward would feel far more secure about the ordinance that we just passed with this resolution having been addressed.
I'll recognize Alderpersons Fabrizio, Letterman, and then the mayor.
I think it is totally relevant and that we should deal with this now. We just put a piece of legislation in place for ADUs. This will help enable people to actually do this. So why would we not do this, right? This just puts it in writing. I think this is exactly what we need to do.
Letterman.
I mean, I understand that it's relevant as it's on the same topic of accessory dwelling units. I will, and we are already have spent $50,000 doing point B, which is provide template designs. I will say to my colleague, who I think is often the biggest stickler about procedure for any of us, that we go through the proper procedure with this too and discuss it in the committee as opposed to discussing it, passing it immediately. Especially when it's not exactly clear what this would require staff to actually do. For instance, I don't know what it means will pursue seeking tax abatements by development by residents. So again, I would support referring this to a committee.
Alderperson Kumar's next.
Yeah, I'd like to call the question on this.
Is there a second? Second by Alderperson Brown. All those in favor of calling the question? Those opposed? The motion fails because we are at a common council meeting, which means that it is a quorum that requires to pass it, not just a majority of those present, which means that it fails 5-4.
So it would have needed
6.
Got it. Sorry.
Thanks. Recognize the mayor. I agree on the procedural points. Has the city attorney's office reviewed this?
It has not.
Okay. Alderperson Fabrizio.
With regard to the seeking tax abatements, we did actually talk about this at previous discussions about ADUs. We've talked about the template designs, and as you noted, we gave $50,000 toward that. So the other stuff that's on here is pretty makes a lot of sense, right? That efforts to collaborate with local lenders to enable and support financing for residents, that would be awesome. I think that would be help people. It would be one more incentive, and potentially a list of certified contractors knowledgeable about city building codes would also help. So I think all of these things are really, really useful. And I would support this without spending more time on it.
No, I just want to say that before our Director of Planning and Development left, she said most of these things are already in progress and that she would be happy at a future meeting to just walk through there are some nuances to some of these things, and this has not yet been reviewed by the city attorney, but the staff is actually already working on a majority of the items in this resolution. So she said she would be happy to come back and just provide a report. And if you wanted to pass a more directive piece of legislation once you have the information from her, then you absolutely could do that.
Thank you, City Manager, and thank you to our Director of Planning, Lisa Nicholas. Alderperson Brown.
I believe, being on this council, I've always heard, let's talk about it. Let's get more information about it. Let's get the community to weigh in on it. And to say, let's just pass it tonight is contradictory of how we've been told we need to do this. So I'd like to see it move to the council. Yeah.
All those in favor of Alderperson Keel's motion to move this to a committee meeting? Those opposed? That carries 8-1 with Alderperson St. Perez against. Can I have your computer? Because my computer is dead. By computer, I mean cell phone. Right. I have Ithaca Housing Authority appointments. I am moving. So these are folks, again, these are selections made by the Ithaca Housing Authority Board and then sent to my office. So this is, as many of the members, all the members of council know, and many of the members of the public know, we have recently overhauled our appointment system for mayoral and other administrative appointments. This falls outside of the scope of that, as these are recommendations that are brought by the Ithaca Housing Authority Director from their community to my office. With that, yes, yeah. With that being said, I am moving that Joyce Kelly and Bonita Griffin be appointed to the Ithaca Housing Authority Board. Comments on the appointments, Alderperson Keel.
Did we receive resumes for these two appointments?
No, I might have said it too quickly, but yeah, no, we did not, because that's not how the Ithaca Housing Authority submits their recommendations to the mayor's office.
Okay. Well, with that being said, as I said last meeting, I really would like to know more about the people that we're appointing before voting on them. So I understand everybody else's vote, but I will be voting against appointments. I know it's not their process, but.
Sure. Alderperson Fabrizio?
Can I just ask, do we know where do we know if the candidates are city residents?
They're required to live in the facilities, in the Ithaca Housing Authority.
I see, within the city.
Which are within the city. Yes, of course, which are
Okay.
within the city. Alderperson Letterman?
I explained. So I was actually at I was in their December meeting, just so I could see how the Housing Authority Board of Commissioners operated. I would say, both of these, I would recommend. They were both sort of active participants in the discussion there. How the Housing Authority works, and yes, I'm this big of a nerd.
Alderperson Letterman, with respect, we have 2 executive sessions.
Okay.
If you're going to vote in favor of this or not?
Yes, I was just going to
Okay.
say, I was recommending
So-
both these people, but there
Alderperson,
are, okay.
could we, please?
But they're also not required to be residents.
Yeah.
Well, since you're so curious, there are 7 commissioners. 2 of them are elected
wanna
from the
censure him?
residents that are residents. The other 5 are city residents who are appointed by the mayor of the city
Correct.
per state law.
Right. No. They're all city residents.
Elected by people who live in the relevant sort of housing developments.
Thank you, Alderperson. All those in favor of these appointments? Those opposed, that carries 8-1 with Alderperson Keel against. For the edification of the public, there will be 2 executive sessions with no voting items out of either one. So you are all welcome to go home. And the deputy clerk is welcome to end the live stream broadcast as soon as we move ourselves into executive session. May I have a motion to enter into executive session to discuss a personnel matter? That is moved by Alderperson St. Perez, seconded by Alderperson Kumar. All those in favor of entering into executive session? That carries unanimously.